Sink into the hush of twilight, letting the last silver rays of the sun slip quietly beyond the horizon. Close your eyes, if you will, and imagine the soft vibration of the desert air as it sighs against ancient stones. You stand at the threshold of a world shaped by golden sands and fertile riverbanks, where time floats like pollen upon the Nile's gentle currents. Here, in a realm of shifting light and shadow, you will learn why cats, sleek silhouettes against sunlit walls, became sanctified companions to pharaohs and commoners alike. You feel the warmth of limestone beneath your fingertips, tracing the curve of a temple's relief, where a slender cat reclines beside a seated goddess. Its eyes, carved in obsidian, seem to follow you with an inscrutable patience. Beneath the carved cat, a priestess stands draped in diaphanous linen, her wrists bound in golden bracelets that glint like desert stars. You sense the hush of her solitude, a daughter of nobility promised to a prince she has never met, her heart cloaked in the pall of duty and silence. Listen, now, to the soft chorus of clacking sandals and the distant call of temple bells. The air trembles with the scent of lotus blossoms and the faint tang of incense. Each breath you draw carries the weight of untold stories, of women whose names have faded but whose spirits linger in the hush between ritual and offering. You walk beside the river, feet sinking into cool, damp earth. Water ripples around your ankles, reflecting the pale light of a waxing moon. A small kitten emerges from the reeds, its fur the color of burnt sienna, eyes wide as molten amber. You crouch to let it brush against your hand. In that gentle nuzzle there is a promise of protection, of devotion, of secrets whispered under moonlight. In this land of dualities, life and death, sun and shadow, power and surrender, the cat becomes a living glyph. Neferur, daughter of Hatshepsut, once wore the title God's wife, her destiny tethered to the temple of Amun. She was garlanded in roses and perfume at dawn, yet by dusk her laughter echoed hollow through colonnades meant for royalty. She, too, found solace in the grace of cats. When courtiers whispered behind her back, she would slip away to the temple courtyard, her skirts brushing the sandstone, where a tabby would leap upon her lap and knead contentedly. In the steady rhythm of its paws she discovered a heartbeat that belonged only to her. As you rise to your feet, the kitten follows, its mew soft as a prayer. It guides you inland, along a path flanked by papyrus reeds quivering in the night breeze. Each reed is a silent sentinel, bearing witness to the passage of traders, travelers, and brides cloaked in sorrow. Among them was Amos Nefertari, whose beauty was extolled in every palace hall. She was celebrated in song, yet the loss of her daughters, taken by a cruel fever, left her grief unspoken. In private moments she fed fish scraps to a black cat named Bastet, whispering the names of her lost children to its unblinking ears. In that exchange, she felt her sorrow transmute into something sacred, something both fragile and enduring. You pause at the mouth of a cavernous sanctuary hewn from living rock. Faint tunnels branch like veins, leading deeper into darkness. Torchlight dances along murals of dancing felines, their bodies poised in perfect symmetry. You run your palm across a painted ear, textured with minute brush strokes of ochre and lapis lazuli. Every curve speaks of reverence. Here, priests chanted ancient hymns to Bastet, goddess of home and hearth, protector of women and children. The liturgy praises her mercy, her watchful gaze, her claws that tear at serpents rising from the marsh. Yet in the hush of the chamber, you sense a softer invocation. Women offering heartfelt pleas in the silence between each syllable. They beseech Bastet for consolation when life's burdens weighed too heavily upon their slender shoulders. Ahead, a solitary statue of Bastet stands sentinel upon a pillar of alabaster. By its feet crouches a life-size cat carved from dark basalt. When moonlight filters through high slits in the stone ceiling, it washes the goddess in ethereal silver. The statue's eyes gleam as though they were fashioned from the very night itself. You close your eyes and imagine yourself leaning against that cold stone, listening to the echo of your own breath. In that echo you hear countless prayers, prayers for safe childbirth, prayers for deliverance from betrayal, prayers for strength in the face of political marriages sealed by contract rather than by choice. You think of Maridaman, wed at 12 to a man she barely knew, a union meant to strengthen alliances between powerful houses. She wore a necklace of coral beads, each one a silent testament to her youth slipping away. They said she was fair as dawn's first light, but the fine lines that grief etched around her eyes told a different story. In secret corners of the palace garden, she would stroke the soft back of a silver-furred feline whose purrs could drown out whispered rumors of her isolation. In the warmth of its body, she rediscovered a measure of belonging, a tiny rebellion against the destiny imposed upon her. The breathing patterns of cats became enshrined in ritual. Chants described the gentle rise and fall of their chests as rhythmic offerings to the sun's daily rebirth. In the elegance of their poise, priests read portents of the coming seasons, an unspoken language of tail flicks and ear twitches. Farmers accorded their fields to the guidance of these creatures, believing that a cat's favored corner might yield the richest barley and the sweetest grapes. In every household, a cat's presence warded off vermin, and symbolically the creeping malaise of doubt and despair. By now, the moon has ascended its highest arc, and you walk along a narrow colonnade awash in pale alabaster. Under each arch rests a small offering bowl, filled with fish, milk, and honey. Each bowl bears the name of a woman, wrapped in linen tombs elsewhere, her story consigned to faded scrolls. Here, however, her essence persists, carried forward by a piece of bread or a handful of dates. The offering is simple yet potent, an act of remembrance in a world where memory often slips through the sieve of power and time. You step into a courtyard where statues of felines sit upon pedestals arranged in perfect symmetry. Their forms echo the balance of Ma'at, the principle of harmony and justice that governed every heartbeat of Egyptian life. In the center stands a single bench of red granite, the seat of the queen's advisor. Often it was here that whispers of political maneuvering swirled, alliances forged and shattered like fragile glass. Yet when court matters grew too heated, the queen herself would retreat here, accompanied only by her favorite cat, Cleopatra's own shadow and fur. As you imagine the cat circling her ankles, you feel the hush of palace intrigue replaced by a softer allegiance, one rooted in companionship rather than power. Behind you, a breeze stirs the papyrus, carrying the faint echo of a lament. You close your eyes to hear more clearly. A distant melody played on a harp, notes dripping with longing. A woman's voice joins in, low and mournful, recounting the exile of a princess whose lineage was deemed too tenuous for the throne. She sings of shattered hopes in a life lived beneath foreign skies. Yet at the song's end, she speaks of a cat, the sole creature who stayed by her side through endless nights of displacement. In her final verse, she tenderly cradles the cat's head and whispers a vow that her love would endure across sands and seasons, transcending the bounds of flesh and bone. You open your eyes to find yourself back at the temple's outer courtyard. Dawn's first light is brushing the eastern horizon with pale rose and gold. Shadows retreat from column to column, and the statues of Bastet stand as mute witnesses to the night's watch. You feel the soft weight of the kitten in your arms. It has followed you through each chamber and each memory, a silent companion to your solitary pilgrimage. As the cat nuzzles your neck, you sense the threads that bind mortal and divine, past and present, weaving together in a fabric of quiet devotion. And now, you prepare to step back into the waking world, carrying with you the soft echo of a purr and the luminous image of cats as deities of solace. Remember, as you drift towards sleep, that each whisker-stroked brow and moonlit gaze once held the power to comfort hearts aching with unspoken grief. In their gentle company, even forgotten women found redemption. Let this lingering memory settle in your mind, a testament to the unwavering bond between you and those silent, graceful guardians of ancient nights. Sleep now, beneath the soft caress of moonbeams, and let the silent silhouettes of cats guide you through realms of dreams unspoken. You follow the kitten through a narrow corridor, whose walls bear faint traces of gilded hieroglyphs. Each symbol seems to pulse with an ancient heartbeat, as though the stone itself remembers the voices that once chanted here. The air is thick with the musk of incense and the distant echo of water dripping somewhere beyond shadow's reach. You step lightly, as if not to disturb the centuries of quiet devotion that cling to every surface. Ahead, the corridor opens into a subterranean chamber, where an alabaster basin rests upon a low dais. Pale moonlight from a slit high in the ceiling shivers across its surface, revealing patterns of lotus and papyrus entwined in delicate relief. You approach and see that the basin is filled with water so still it mirrors the night sky above. Ripples refract starlight into tendrils of silver that dance across your upturned face. In this reflection, you glimpse the outline of a woman kneeling at the chamber's edge, her body draped in linen so fine it seems spun from morning mist. She is anonymous, a royal scribe tasked with recording the hymns and decrees of a pharaoh whose name has been erased by time. You trace the curve of her neck, the arch of her shoulders, and in the curve of her spine you sense the weight of unspoken words. By day she transcribed the voices of gods and kings. By night she poured her own stories into hidden scrolls buried beneath the sand. When the court's politics grew too perilous, she would slip away to this chamber, her pen dipped in ink made from crushed beetles and soot. With each stroke, she released fragments of herself, dreams of freedom, fears of betrayal, the ache of longing for a life beyond royal edicts. The kitten mews softly and rubs against her hand, offering comfort where no human voice can reach. You lower yourself to sit beside her, your reflection merging with hers in the tranquil pool. She lifts her head and you see her eyes, dark pools reflecting the torchlight behind you. Her gaze holds both weariness and fierce determination. "They told me my words were too bold," she whispers, voice barely louder than a breath. "But in ink I found my voice." You feel the tremor in her words, the fragile hope she guards like a precious stone. Rising, she leads you deeper, down a flight of steps carved into living rock. Each step echoes with the passing of generations, descendants of pharaohs, priests, and artisans whose labors shaped the land. The kitten's silent paws pad beside yours, guiding you into a vast hall where columns rise like ancient palms, their capitals blooming with painted lotus. Torches crown each column, casting flickering light that reveals scenes of daily life. Women weaving linen, bakers shaping loaves, mothers cradling infants swaddled in strips of cotton. At the far end, an alcove houses a colossal statue of the goddess Sekhmet, lioness-headed and regal. Her basalt form glints with a soft inner light, as though she breathes beneath her stone skin. You feel her gaze settle upon you, fierce yet compassionate. She is both healer and destroyer, protector of the vulnerable, avenger of wrongs. Here, women sought her mercy when they faced betrayal, miscarriages, the death of children. They offered bowls of beer and plates of figs, each gift a token of trust in her dual nature. A slender figure emerges from the shadows, Marasank, a distant cousin of Khufu's line. She was granted the title of King's Beloved, yet her name lives only in fragments scrawled on temple walls. In her arms she cradles a small statue of Sekhmet she carved herself, smoothing every curve with a craftsman's care. You step closer and feel the coolness of the stone against your fingertips. In Marasank's eyes there is both pride and mourning, pride for her craftsmanship, mourning for the loss of autonomy she surrendered when her hand was promised to a man thrice her age. "She taught me resilience," Marasank says softly, "in the rending of cloth, in the molding of clay." She lifts the statue toward the goddess, offering it like a child. Flames dance in the torches, illuminating the gold leaf of Sekhmet's crown. You sense the trembling of the air, as though the goddess's roar still resonates here. Marasank kneels, placing her gift at the lioness's feet, then presses the base of the statue to her heart. In that motion, you witness the transfer of trauma into art, a transformation that spans the chasm between constraint and expression. Beside you, the kitten leaps onto a low bench carved from sandstone. It settles beside a small wicker basket lined with scraps of papyrus. Inside are votive tablets inscribed with names: Neferu, Isis Nofret, Kiya, women whose lives were entwined with royalty, yet whose stories slipped through the sieve of history. Each tablet holds a plea: for children safely born, for husbands who remembered kindness, for peace in the face of courtly betrayal. You recognize in these fragments the echoes of your own heart's prayers. Marasank rises, brushing the folds of her linen skirt. She glances back at you, and in her expression you feel both invitation and farewell. "The goddess hears every whispered name," she says, voice like wind through reeds, "but it is in our remembrance that they live on." You follow her out of the hall, emerging into a courtyard awash in midnight silver glow. Here, the air hums with the chorus of nocturnal life. Crickets hidden among papyrus, owls perched atop columns, the slumbering hum of distant city walls. In the courtyard's center stands a shallow pool reflecting the stars. You catch sight of a lone reed whispering its prayer to the heavens. The kitten hops beside you, tail curved in contemplative grace. Ahead lies the palace's private garden, a labyrinth of raised beds filled with jasmine and marigold, vines twining lattices in arabesque patterns. The scent is almost intoxicating, sweet beneath the canopy of date palms. Statues of cats in reclining poses dot the enclaves, each one bearing the name of a woman who tended these gardens. You pause by a statue inscribed Bintanath, daughter of Rameses II. Her likeness shows a serene face framed by tight curls, eyes uplifted in perpetual prayer. Next to it, a small bowl brims with crushed petals of calendula, offered to soothe her spirit, to honor her unspoken grief over marriages she never chose. You pass through the garden's heart, where benches of red granite face one another across a fountain. The water murmurs gently, spilling from a lion's head in perpetual stream. At one bench sits Hathor Irbi, a concubine whose laughter once filled corridors with brightness. Now her name is almost lost. Only this bench bears witness to her kindness. You sit beside her memorial, the kitten in your lap, and breathe in the cool mist that rises from the fountain. You imagine her gentle hands weaving garlands for temple dancers, her voice joining tambourines in celebration. And yet, behind every smile, you sense the hush of isolation she endured, a gentle soul hidden beneath the Pharaoh's harem. From beyond the garden walls comes the faint patter of footsteps. You turn to see a young acolyte, Tawera, named for the hippo goddess of childbirth. Her childbearing hips belie her youth. Already she bears the seal of the temple around her throat. In her eyes flickers both awe and the weight of legacy. She steps forward, offering a small clay lamp whose flame dances like a captive star. The darkness can be a cradle, she murmurs, and flame our whispered promise. She sets the lamp beside the feline statue and retreats, leaving the flame to sway in the night breeze. You rise and continue wandering among the statues, each flame revealing new faces, women bound by duty, by exile, by the quiet suffocation of courtly intrigue. And yet, in each carved cat you see their defiance. A gentle curve of a tail, a poised head turned skyward, an unfaltering gaze that speaks of guardianship transcending flesh. In the garden's farthest corner, you find a low archway leading to a narrow tunnel. The stones here are older still, pitted with time, and vines drape across the entrance like a beaded curtain. The kitten pauses, head cocked, as though it recalls this passage from dreams. You kneel to glide aside the vines and slip through into a small crypt illuminated by phosphorescent blue-green moss. In the center rests a sarcophagus of black granite, its lid carved with the image of a cat reclining atop a lotus throne. You press your palm to the sarcophagus and feel a faint vibration, like a heartbeat beneath stone. A hush fills the chamber, a promise, a memory, an echo of lives woven into eternity. In this stillness you think of the countless women whose hearts beat here, daughters of nobles, temple dancers, scribes, artisans, mothers, grandmothers. You sense their collective breath, a quiet murmur that threads through the temple's stones, through the winding Nile, through the arc of endless skies. The kitten leaps onto the sarcophagus, settling into the carved outline of the cat. It stares at you with eyes that shine like lanterns in the gloom. You kneel beside it and close your eyes, breathing in time with its steady purr. In that rhythm you hear the voices of women long gone, their stories woven into the soft cadence of history's unfolding tapestry. And as you rise to leave, the kitten bounds ahead, guiding you back toward the temple's outer gates. Above you, the first glow of dawn begins to stir the horizon, painting the world in shades of rose and dove gray. You take one last look at the moss-clad crypt, a silent vow forming on your lips, to carry these stories with you, to breathe life into names once forgotten, to honor the gentle guardians who bore witness to their sorrows and their grace. Step now through the archway where morning awaits, cradling the kitten close. Ahead lies the waking world, but within you remains the hush of sacred stones and the shimmer of feline devotion. Let these whispers guide you until you awaken, heart softened by the grace of mothers, daughters, scribes, and queens, each kept safe by the silent strength of cats. You emerge from the garden's scented hush into a labyrinth of low corridors, where walls of sun-baked brick glow faintly in the dawn light that filters through narrow slits above. The kitten leads you onward, its paws soundless, as though it walks upon air. In this threshold between night and day, you feel suspended, in the space where whispered prayers linger and yesterday's sorrows breathe alongside the promise of morning. Ahead, a courtyard unfolds around a central basin carved from red granite. Water stills its surface in perfect reflection, mirroring the pale sky and the silhouette of a solitary column crowned with a seated feline. You approach the pool's edge, kneeling to let your fingertips disturb the glassy calm. Ripples spread outward, distorting the column's image until it shimmers back into form. In that dance of light, you see the image of a woman, smudged ink on papyrus, a fragment of a tale half told, whose name began with T and ended neither in triumph nor tragedy, but in silence. You feel her presence beside you, a gentle warmth that springs from the heart of stone. She was T, companion to Amenhotep III, whose own voice was swallowed by grander legacies. In late summer evenings, she would whisper her fears to the water, lamenting the children she could not bear, the crown that weighed too heavily upon her brow. A delicate chain of gold would circle her throat, claiming her loyalty, even as her heart fluttered with unspoken desire for a life of her own making. You imagine her kneeling here, hands pressed to water, offering tears in place of fish and milk. The kitten mews, urging you to rise. You follow a narrow stair that curves downward, each step smoother from centuries of passing feet. The air cools as you descend, redolent with the scent of damp earth and the memory of oil baths poured for embalmers and initiates alike. At the base of the stair, a vaulted vault awaits, a crypt devoted not to pharaohs, but to the sisters of the royal household. Moss-green columns flank its entrance, carved with lotus buds just opening at dawn. You step inside and find yourself surrounded by niches, each holding a small alabaster box tied with linen ribbon. You lift the lid of one and discover strands of hair, golden as ripened wheat, bound in loops like garlands. A faded amulet lies atop, shaped like the eye of Horus. You sense the story of an aristocratic girl, wed at 13, whose love was captured in each gleaming lock. She wore her hair long, only to have it cut in mourning for a sister lost to sudden illness. The scissors fell like judgment upon the world she knew. Yet in this reliquary she remains, hair untrimmed by time, a testament to youthful bonds severed too soon. Another niche reveals a clay figurine of a dancer, painted in ochre and lapis. Its slender arms lift in eternal praise, hips tilted in the rhythm of hymns sung at festival dawn. You imagine the dancer's laughter echoing through temple halls, only to be silenced by the Pharaoh's decree that she serve instead at his palace. There, in the hush behind closed doors, her feet learn new steps, choreographed for courtly display rather than sacred ritual. In each measured motion, she felt the tension between devotion to goddess and devotion to crown, her feet tracing circles of duty upon polished stone. You wander deeper, where the air thickens as though memory itself has a weight. Here stands a low altar heaped with broken pottery, offerings left undone. Each shard bears a name scratched upon its rim. Ujepten, Harwa, Satya. You read these names like futures unfulfilled. A priestess stripped of rank, a healer whose remedies failed, a queen whose reign lasted but a single season before rivals tore her down. You extend your hand to brush the rim of one shard and feel the tremor of sorrow that lingers in its edges. The kitten jumps onto the altar, scattering shards like confetti. You crouch to gather a fragment, lifting it to the light. In its curve, you trace a stylized cat's ear, painted in fading black. It was meant to honor Bastet, protector of hearth and home, yet now it lies abandoned, a relic of faith unclaimed. You imagine the woman who placed it here, her voice hushed, her prayer intimate, and you honor her by whispering her name aloud. The syllables hang in the air, fragile as gossamer. From beyond the vault's far wall comes a corridor lit by oil lamps set in bronze sconces. Their flames flicker as you pass, casting dancing shadows of curling smoke. The kitten leads you through a low arch carved with the image of Sekhmet in her warrior aspect, lioness mane flaring, eyes alight with purpose. Here, offerings once piled high, jars of honey, gourds of beer, have given way to empty pedestals. You sense the absence as sharply as a wound. The devotion that once shaped destiny, now lost to shifting sands and changing tastes. You reach a chamber whose walls overflow with script, lines of hieroglyphs that twist and turn like serpents. You lay your palm against them, feeling the tiny indentations of each stroke. These are the personal prayers of women who sought guidance for childbirth, petitions for protection against poison, pleas for husbands faithful beyond the veil of palace intrigue. The texts are worn, some glyphs erased by hands seeking to erase the supplicant's memory along with the plea. Yet here, hidden in a back corridor, they remain, unclaimed remnants of human longing. The kitten presses its head against your leg, its purr reverberating with the pulse of the chamber. You close your eyes, letting the hum envelop you. In that vibration, you hear the echoes of hearts laid bare, the murmur of voices that once called upon the divine. You wish you could speak their names, but many are lost, women born into privilege, then buried beneath layers of stone and title. Women born in humble hamlets, their faith woven from daily labors rather than royal decree. In their collective silence, you feel the weight of centuries. A final doorway beckons, a narrow portal concealed behind a hanging of frayed linen. You draw the fabric aside and step into a sunlit court at the heart of the temple complex. Here, statues of cats stretch in graceful arcs, carved from yellow sandstone warmed by the rising sun. Their forms vary, some slender and vigilant, others plump and serene, some with tails curled in repose, others with tails raised in alert posture. Each embodies a facet of catkind: guardian, companion, seer, trickster. At the center stands a life-sized bronze cat, its surface mottled with verdigris. It sits upon a pedestal carved with the names of 8 women, queens, priestesses, scribes, mothers, who each sustain the sacred bond between feline and human. You approach and read their names in slow cadence: Nitocris, Hetepheres, Mutnajmet, Ahotep, Ankhnes Neferebre, Tausret, Sitamun, and Takat. Their inscriptions speak of piety and service, but also of absence. Children lost in infancy, husbands entombed in war, titles stripped by usurpers. Their devotion to the cat goddess became a refuge, a source of strength when all else failed. You kneel before the bronze cat, closing your eyes. In your mind's eye, you picture each of these women bowing in devotion, laying offerings of fish and linen at the goddess's feet. You imagine them feeling the rise and fall of the cat's chest, a silent affirmation that life persists even amid grief. You feel a warmth bloom in your chest, a kinship that spans millennia. Rising, you place your hand on the bronze's cool flank. You whisper a vow, to carry their stories beyond these stones, to breathe life into names that time sought to bury. The kitten arches into your palm, its eyes reflecting the morning sun. Together, you turn toward the temple's outer gate, where the world beyond awaits. Outside, the air shimmers with heat beginning to climb. Tradesmen set up stalls along the Nile's quayside. Merchants call out wares from distant lands. Children race beneath date palms, their laughter bright against the hum of bustling life. You watch them briefly, feeling the pull of the present moment, yet the images of women and cats remain vivid upon your mind's canvas. The kitten slips from your arms and pads away, settling at the foot of a carved sphinx that marks the temple's entrance. It sits like a sentinel, awaiting your return. You pat its head gently before stepping onto the stone steps that lead down to the riverbank. Each footfall echoes with the weight of everything you have witnessed, stories carved in stone, whispered in ink, woven through pottery and bronze. At the water's edge, you pause to fill your cupped hands with Nile water. You lift it to your lips, tasting the river's essence, mineral sweet and alive. As you drink, you feel the currents of history swirl within you. The strength of queens, the devotion of priestesses, the quiet resilience of mothers and scribes. And you sense the watchful gaze of cats everywhere, upon thresholds, on temple walls, in the hearts of those who loved them. The kitten mews once more, as though reminding you that your journey is not yet complete. You turn to follow its slender shadow, stepping onto a small boat moored to the bank. A single oar rests against the hull, awaiting your hand. You settle onto the wooden bench and push away, the boat gliding silently into the sweep of the Nile. Behind you, the temple recedes into the distance, its towers and pylons softened by morning haze. As the boat drifts, you close your eyes and lean back, letting the gentle rocking lull you. The sun climbs higher, painting the river in molten gold. You breathe deeply, savoring the warmth that seeps into your bones. Around you, the world hums with life, but in your heart, the quiet stories of forgotten women and their feline guardians continue to echo, a soft refrain that will accompany you until the final part of your journey unfolds. You drift upon the river's mirrored surface until the temple's silhouette dissolves into morning mist. The oar falls silent in your hand as you lean into the lull of the Nile's gentle swell. Close your eyes and feel the warmth of the sun upon your face, the slight brush of breeze that carries reeds' hushed rustle. In this moment between water and sky, you sense your own heartbeat slow to match the rhythm of feline breathing, a steady rise and fall that speaks of both rest and vigilance. A soft mew draws you from reverie. You open your eyes to find the kitten padding along the gunwale, its tail held high like a banner in the breeze. It looks at you with amber eyes that hold untold depths, as though it has seen every dawn and every dusk since time began. You stretch out a hand and it nuzzles your palm, reminding you of the countless bonds formed in dusty courtyards and candlelit chambers. Behind you, the river widens into a vast expanse of glimmering water. Boats laden with grain, pottery, and woven baskets drift lazily with the current. Farmers guide feluccas toward flooded fields where young buffalo wade in the shallows. Each scene unfolds like a living tapestry, every thread connected to the stories you have carried. Stories of queens who found solace in whiskered companions, of scribes who bled ink for their buried truths, of artisans whose hands shaped both art and memory. You rise to your feet, the kitten following. The boat slows as it slips into a shallow inlet fringed by papyrus. Sunlight filters through feathery plumes, casting shifting mosaics upon the water. You step ashore, silent as a shadow, and the kitten leaps down to circle your ankles. Together you walk toward a low mound draped in reeds, a burial site for the forgotten daughters of nobles. No grand mausoleum marks their passing, only faded stelae carved with simple cat motifs. You kneel beside one such marker. Its inscription, worn nearly away, once read, "Beloved of Bastet, may her purr guard your rest." You trace the rough lines with your fingertip, imagining the artisan's careful chisel and the woman who commissioned it to honor her aunt, a caretaker of temple lamps, whose kindness illuminated many dark nights. The kitten settles beside you, curling its tail around your hand. You close your eyes, honoring the silence shared between you and the departed. Rising, you follow a narrow path that winds through low dunes. The landscape shifts from fertile marsh to arid plain, each step carrying you farther from the world of stone pillars and painted reliefs. Yet in your mind the images remain vivid. A priestess murmuring secret hymns, a princess releasing a cat into the fields to guard her family's granaries, a widow weaving gold thread into a cat-shaped amulet as a vow of remembrance for her lost love. Ahead stands a lone palm, its fronds swaying against the cobalt sky. Beneath it, a small shrine has been erected, a low altar of sun-baked brick upon which rests a bronze statuette of Bastet. Around its base, simple offerings, dried figs, cracked millet, a single linen ribbon, testify to devotion beyond the palace walls. You approach and lay your palm on the statuette's cool surface. In that contact, you feel the hush of ages, a presence neither fierce nor distant, but undeniably near. You speak her name softly, Bastet, and the wind stirs the ribbon, lifting it like a small triumph. The kitten watches, head tilted as though it too senses the sacred moment. You bow your head, offering gratitude for the guardianship that cats provided to women of every station. The young girl robbed of childhood, the noble woman trapped in marriage contracts, the scribe who dared to write her soul onto papyrus. Drawing back, you notice footprints in the sand, tiny imprints left by the kitten's paws in your own sandals. They lead toward the horizon, where dunes glow gold in the afternoon sun. You follow them until you reach a crest overlooking the broad sweep of the Nile Valley. Below, the river snakes between fields and villages. Beyond, a distant mountain range rises like a monolith against the sky. Here, at the edge of two worlds, you pause to breathe deeply of sun and earth. The kitten pads to the crest beside you, gazing down into the valley. In its posture, you recognize the timeless vigilance of feline form. The same posture carved on temple gates, the same silhouette painted on papyrus scrolls. You sit upon the sand, drawing knees to chest, the kitten curling into the hollow of your arm. In the silence that follows, you reflect on the journey you have taken, through torchlit halls, across marble courtyards, within the inner sanctum of hearts long stilled. You have borne witness to stories nearly erased by time, yet kept alive by the unassuming grace of cats. In your mind's eye, you see the faces of those women, Neferrer and Amos Nefertari, Meritamen and Anonymous, T and Marisonk, each one traced in the soft contours of a feline form. You realize that their devotion to cats was more than ritual. It was an affirmation of their own dignity in worlds that sought to possess them. In the gentle companionship of a cat, they found space to breathe, to dream, to remember who they were beneath veils of title and duty. A breeze carries the faint scent of lotus and date palm blossoms, mingled with the dry warmth of sun-baked sand. You close your eyes, letting the fragrance weave around you like a lullaby. The kitten purrs, a low vibration that pulses through your arm. In that purr, you feel the threads of memory and myth entwine, binding past and present, mortal and divine. As the sun dips lower, painting the dunes in amber hues, you rise and take one last look at the river valley. The world shimmers with life, the soft murmur of fishermen hauling nets, the distant laughter of children playing among reeds, the slow rise and fall of buffalo backs in the water. And across this living tapestry, the spirit of cats moves unseen yet ever present, in the flick of tail, the silent leap, the unguarded moment of rest. You turn back toward the path you came, footprints tracing your departure across the dune crest. The kitten stays briefly at your side before darting ahead, pausing now and then to look back as if to guide you onward. You walk until the horizon stretches endless before you, sand meeting sky in a haze of gold. And here, in this place of liminal light, you pause to speak a final benediction. May the soft steps of cats lead you through darkness. May their purrs cradle your sorrows into rest. May the memory of those forgotten women whisper in your dreams, urging you to tell their stories afresh. You close your eyes and breathe deep, gathering the hush of desert wind into your bones. When you open them again, the world is tinged with dusk's approaching veil. The kitten circles once before slipping into a dune hollow, curling into a graceful crescent as though to sleep. You sit beside it, the warmth of sand beneath you and the wide sky above. In this perfect stillness, you feel the gentle pull of sleep, the same pull that once guided daughters of Pharaohs into dreams, safe beneath the watchful eyes of Bast-shaped guardians. Let the final image settle deep within you. A single cat curled upon golden sand, its silhouette softened by the glow of dusk, its breathing steady and sure. In that image you find solace, a reminder that in every corner of history, no matter how silent, there is companionship, there is witness, there is grace. Rest now and let the night enfold you. The kittens of eternity keep eternal watch. Sink into the hush of evening as dusk spills like honey across the horizon. Close your eyes and feel the soft weight of silence settle around you, a gentle curtain drawing you into a realm of incense-laden corridors and shadowed sanctuaries. There is no hurry here, only the slow cadence of your breath, echoing the measured rhythm of distant temple drums. Let the stillness cradle you as you journey into the secret life of Egypt's priests, where whispered rites and hidden grief intertwine beneath gilded ceilings and in the quiet corners of stone. You stand at the threshold of a hypostyle hall, its columns towering like primordial palms, their capitals unfurling in carved lotus blooms. The air is thick with the scent of frankincense and myrrh, each breath a tapestry woven from smoke and spice. Torches gutter in sconces of hammered bronze, casting their dance of flame upon walls painted in ochre, turquoise, and lapis. The murals here tell tales of gods once known only to a select few. Amun-Re in his sunlit glory, Thoth in ibis mask holding the scales of truth, Sekhmet with her lioness gaze, protector of the sacred flame. Yet even these grand images feel hushed, as if conscious of the softest step you take. A figure emerges from the gloom, a high priest clothed in linen the color of moonlight, his head shaved and oiled, a slender strip of coal tracing the curve of his eyelid. He carries a censer of copper, its chain pendulum swinging like a metronome marking time's unceasing march. With each careful swing, a plume of incense drifts upward, coiling around carved beams and slipping through narrow windows cut high above. You follow him along a corridor, footsteps muffled on sand-smooth stone, until you arrive at a heavy wooden door banded with bronze studs. He pauses, glancing back as if aware of your presence, though it is in his nature to see all yet speak little. He pushes the door aside, revealing a chamber bathed in pale starlight that filters through a shaft in the ceiling. The floor is tiled in black and white checker patterns, angled to catch moonbeams and mirror them back in crystalline patterns. At the room's center lies a shallow pool of water, its surface still as glass, reflecting the sky's jeweled canopy. You sense the hush of memory here, whispered invocations of Hathor, untold vows woven between the ripples, and the weight of secrets entrusted to these silent depths. Seated at the pool's edge is a woman draped in gauzy linen, the color of dawn mist. A silver anklet glints around her ankle, etched with tiny hieroglyphs spelling out her name, Neferuank, beauty of life, though few living can recall her story. You kneel beside her, brushing a stray lock of ebony hair behind your ear, and in that gesture, you feel the stir of her loneliness. Once, she served as scribe to the temple of Thoth, her hand deftly tracing divine edicts onto papyrus scrolls. Yet after her husband, a brazen young priest, was summoned to war on the Delta's frontier, she vanished from records, her fate sealed in lines erased by anxious scribes. Here, beneath the moon's soft watch, she writes her own prayers upon the water's surface, each fingertip stroke dissolving into ripples that carry her words toward heaven. You rise, following her gaze across the hall to a small niche built into the wall. Within it stands a bronze statuette of Mahat, feathered goddess of order and truth. In front of the statuette lies an offering tray heaped with blue lotus petals, crushed incense resin, and a single garland of wilting roses. Neferuank rises to place her scroll of secrets, inked with her confessions of love and loss, at the goddess's feet. You bow your head alongside hers, sharing the silent act of release. The scent of lotus rises, sweet and melancholic, as though the goddess herself inhales the sorrow you have offered. Stepping away, you follow a narrow stair that spirals upward, each step worn smooth by centuries of barefoot priests. The walls here are unadorned, stone-cold and damp, a stark contrast to the splendor below. The hum of cicadas drifts from outside, distant yet persistent, as though the world beyond the temple's walls continues its careless turn. You climb until you reach a wooden balcony overlooking the Nile, its rail fretworked with patterns of papyrus reeds. Below, the river glints like molten gold under the watchful eye of dawn's first light. Here stands Hathor Erbi, Hathor's reflection, a priestess dedicated to the goddess of joy and music. Draped in crimson linen that catches the sun, she holds a sistrum, a sacred rattle whose bronze discs tremble in anticipation of the early hymn. Her voice has been trained to resonate with the temple's acoustics, a low, sonorous hum that stirs the air like a breeze through reeds. But today, the hymn falters. As she begins to chant, her voice quivers, burdened by the memory of her daughter, given in marriage to a distant noble to cement a political alliance. The child's laughter once filled these balconies. Now only the sistrum's hollow clatter remains. You watch her clench the rattle, knuckles whitening, and you feel the ache of her solitude. She breathes in, resuming the chant, each note a fragile thread knitting her grief into devotion. Below you, the river currents swirl around a low barge. It carries alabaster jars of sacred oil, destined for the great temple at Karnak. You descend the stair to join the boat, where a cadre of priests in white kilts stand silent, arms folded across their chests. Among them is Merit Aset, whose name means beloved of Isis. She once wielded healing salves fashioned from crushed lotus and honey, tending wounded priests returned from skirmishes along the border. But when a plague swept through the community, its fever scorching the reeds and drying the wells, her remedies fell short. Many succumbed in her unlit clinic, their final breaths a confession upon her trembling hands. Now she carries only empty jars, each one a reminder of lives her healing could not save. You step onto the barge, the wood creaking beneath your feet, and meet her pale gaze. In it you see both determination and the shadow of doubt. "They called me miracle worker," she murmurs, "yet miracles are not mine to grant." The boat pushes off, skimming along the river's mirror. You stand at the prow, the wind tugging at your linen tunic, carrying the scent of rich black earth from the floodplain. The priests beside you chant in low unison, hymns to the rising sun, invocations of renewal. But between their words you hear another murmur, the silent pleas of women unrecorded in official annals. They have names, lives, losses. Their laments ripple through the temple aisles like distant echoes. You feel their presence here, woven into the barge's timbers and the priest's steady cadence, calling you to remember. The barge glides into a side channel choked with reeds. You step ashore into a quiet grove of date palms, their trunks slender and tall, crowns rustling in the breeze. A rough-hewn shrine stands in a small clearing, plastered walls painted with scenes of the afterlife. Boatmen piloting souls across star-strewn waters, fields of grain stretching beneath a turquoise sky. In front of the painting lies a mound of broken pottery, tokens of unfulfilled vows. A young novice, Isetkert, kneels beside the pile. She is new to the priesthood, her apprenticeship meant to last a dozen seasons. Yet the daily rigors have claimed more than her youth. They have claimed her identity beyond her sacred duties. Once she dreamed of marriage, of fields where almonds bloom and children's laughter resonates. Here, she trades her hopes for ritual precision, her days consumed by the grind of incense grinding and ledger keeping. Her hands tremble as she places a half jar of honey upon the pottery shards. "May the gods forgive me," she whispers, "for every offering unmade to my own heart." You linger beside her until the wind stirs the palms, drawing her gaze upward. Together, you watch the fronds outline a living canopy against a sky that shifts from rose to gold. In that moment, the burdens you carry of Neferuank's vanished love, of Hathor Erbi's broken hymn, of Merit Aset's empty jars, of Isetkerti's lost dreams, all coalesce into a single unspoken prayer. You step forward to lay your own offering, a handful of black sand gathered from the temple floor, each grain a testament to the lives kept in shadow. As you sprinkle it onto the pottery mound, you feel the hush deepen, as though the world itself listens to the quiet reclamation of memory. Night gathers once more as you make your way back toward the temple's heart. Torches flare to life along the processional way, illuminating hieroglyphs that trace the lineage of pharaohs and priests alike. Each inscription proclaims power, victory, divine favor. But between the grand declarations, you notice faint, almost erased glyphs, the names of women who served in secret, priestesses of Isis who preserved healing lore, wives of high priests who channeled petitions to gods unspoken, daughters trained as oracles whose voices trembled in the night's hush. Their names are fragile echoes, yet they persist in the palimpsest of stone. You pause beneath a portal flanked by sculpted jackals, Anubis watchful guardians of the dead. Beyond lies the inner sanctuary, a room so small that only the high priest may enter, carrying the Ark of Divine Presence. Its walls are veiled in cloth, the floor strewn with petals of blue water lily. You feel a hush so profound that even your heart seems to slow. Though you dare not step inside, you sense the weight of 1,000 ceremonies held here. Purifications at dawn, secret oaths sworn beneath the papyrus ceiling, tears shed into basins of holy water. And you know that somewhere within those veiled walls, women once knelt as well. Midwives guiding sacred births, seers divining the future in the curve of priests' palms, sacrificers of unblemished offerings carried through corridors of soundless reverence. Turning away, you descend through winding passages that lead back into the world beyond stone. The sounds of night greet you, frogs calling from irrigation canals, the far-off bark of temple hounds, the soft susurration of wind across open fields. Above, the stars wheel in their silent orbits, witnesses to countless nights of liturgy and longing. You walk until you reach the outer gate, where the guards stand silent sentry. The high priest emerges, robes fluttering like specters in the torchlight. He inclines his head to you, a gesture both benediction and farewell. You return the nod, carrying in your heart the stories of those hidden women who gave voice to the gods and yet remained voiceless in the chronicles of power. Beyond the gate, the world breathes with ordinary life. Fishermen hauling nets, children chasing drifting lanterns, fruit sellers arranging baskets of pomegranates under flickering lamps. You melt into the crowd, yet within you, the temple corridors continue to pulse with memory. The names of Neferuank, Hathor Erbi, Merit Aset, Isetkerti, and countless others hum like an undertow beneath your skin. Their stories, of clandestine hymns and ruined hopes, of devotion forged in silence, linger in your mind's eye as you drift towards sleep. And as you lay down, let your final vision be of moonlight on polished limestone, the high priest's silhouette framed in an alabaster doorway, incense spiraling around him like a living thing, the soft outline of a woman kneeling in prayer beside him, her voice unheard yet eternal. Let this image settle into your dreams, the secret role of priests, not only as servants of gods, but as keepers of women's hidden griefs and quiet triumphs, woven into the heart of ancient Egypt's mysteries. You follow the high priest's footsteps back into the temple's inner sanctum, where dawn's first light seeps through slender windows and illuminates motes of dust drifting like stars. The air is cooler here, heavy with the residue of night's rituals. Marble floors glisten faintly beneath your sandals, each step echoing in the spacious hall. Flickering torches line the walls, their flames dancing upon gilded reliefs that depict the sacred cycle of life, death, and rebirth. A young acolyte meets you at the threshold of a side chamber, a cella reserved for purification rites. She is Meritnath, whose name means beloved of Nith, goddess of war and weaving. Her hands hold a shallow bronze bowl, brimming with water infused with crushed lotus blossoms. Her eyes, dark as river silt, hold something between fear and resolve. "Come," she whispers, "the waters must be blessed before the midday procession." You kneel beside her and feel the slight tremor in her fingers as she passes the bowl. Together, you raise it toward a small statue of Nith woven from silver thread and wood. She dips her fingers into the water and flicks droplets onto the statue, each splash a quiet benediction. You follow suit. In the liquid shimmer, you glimpse Meritnath's hidden sorrow. Her lover, a temple guard, swallowed by the desert sands on a fateful patrol, his body never recovered. In her gestures, you sense her longing, each drop a prayer for his return that the gods had forever rendered silent. You rise and leave the cella, following Meritnath down a narrow passage whose walls bear the faint aroma of palm fiber torches. The corridor opens into an open-air courtyard framed by slender papyrus columns. The sky here is vast and pale, tinged with the promise of a scorching sun. At the courtyard's center stands an altar scarred by centuries, a blackened patch from countless offerings of burning incense. Around its base, pellets of frankincense and myrrh lie scattered like heavy raindrops. Here kneels Henutawi, mistress of the temple, whose lineage stretches back to the age of pyramids. Her white linen dress is elaborately pleated, gold collar clasped at her throat. She holds a harp fashioned from ebony and gold, its strings strung with hair from temple horses. At her feet lies a scroll inscribed with lamentations for her husband, a foreign diplomat sent to Kush, never to return. Hanatawi's fingers quiver as they coax a single, trembling note that resonates through the columns like a sigh. You stand beside her, feeling the vibration of sound swirl against your skin. In that note, you hear the ache of a woman torn between duty to her station and the ruin of her private life. As the harp's echo fades, Henutawi rises, placing the instrument gently on a raised dais carved from red granite. She steps toward the courtyard's edge, where a stone bench awaits beneath a trellis heavy with vine leaves and jasmine blooms. There, she unveils a small box of polished cedar. Inside rests a pendant shaped like an onyx, wrought of beaten silver and inlaid with lapis lazuli. "He gave this to me on our wedding day," she says, voice low as dusk. She lifts it, letting the lapis catch the sunlight. "When he departed, he said it would keep me bound to him, no matter the distance between our worlds." Her fingers close around the ankh, as though to hold on to a fading dream. You reach out and lay a hand atop hers. The warmth of her palm seeps into your own, a testament to shared loss and unspoken solace. Henutawi nods once, small and resolute, and tucks the pendant into the folds of her gown. She turns her gaze toward a narrow gate leading to the riverbank, where a procession will soon assemble. "They say the gods demand spectacle," she muses, "yet my heart longs only for quiet remembrance." You follow her through the gate, stepping into the bright glare of morning. Beyond the courtyard, priests and priestesses cluster by the Nile, their robes fluttering like reeds in a breeze that carries the scent of fish and papyrus. At the water's edge, slender boats wait, each helmed by temple sailors whose faces are as lined as cracked pottery. You board the nearest vessel beside Hinutawi, settling onto a woven mat as the crew pushes off. The boat's hull glides across the sheen of the river, yes, leaving behind ripples that stretch toward the far bank and vanish. Here, amid the clamoring calls of merchants unloading cargo and the distant toll of temple bells, you feel the weight of Hinutawi's lament settle into the boat's timbers. As the barge drifts eastward, you notice a figure standing at the prow, a woman whose bearing is stately yet subdued. She is Mutem-Wesket, daughter of a pharaoh whose reign bridged war and peace. Her braided hair is bound with golden fillas, and at her waist hangs a pendant shaped like the Eye of Horus. She gazes out across the river, lips parted in silent invocation. You approach her and hear the soft murmur of her prayer, for her 2 young sons lost to fever in the night, for her lineage threatened by the rise of rivals, for her own heart, weary from grief she dare none not show. The water stirs around her sandals, cool and forgiving, and you sense that here, in the cradle of the Nile, Mutem-Wesket seeks refuge from her royal burdens. Nearby, children scramble along the bank, chasing stray cats whose eyes reflect the sun. Their laughter hangs in the air, bright as bells, and for a moment you glimpse the innocence Mutem-Wesket once knew. She turns to you, eyes glinting, and offers a small smile. "They say a mother's heart is endless," she says, voice threaded with sorrow, "but mine feels hollow." You kneel beside her, pressing your palm to her arm. The jade of her bangle is cool under your touch. Your love remains, you whisper. In every ripple, in every whisper of wind, the boat slows as it approaches a small island crowned by a ruined chapel. The chapel's walls are cracked, vines feeding upon the crumbling plaster. Birds wheel overhead, their cries echoing off broken arches. This place once served as a retreat for priests who sought counsel in solitude. Now only a handful remain, preserving what memories they can. You disembark beside Mutem-Wesket, stepping onto soft grass that cushions your footsteps. Inside the chapel, the air is heavy with dampness and the scent of moss. Columns of sandstone stand like remnants of forgotten funerals, each one carved with the name of a priest long past. In one corner, a broken altar lies half sunken in earth. Atop it rests a single scroll sealed with wax, a petition never delivered, addressed to Thoth, god of wisdom, requesting guidance through a time of loss and fear. You unroll the scroll, exposing words written in careful script, a woman's hands shaking as she recorded her plea for her husband's soul to find its way to the afterlife. The name she signs at the bottom is lost to the wax's smudge, yet her anguish is clear. Mutem-Wesket kneels beside you, tracing the script with her fingertip. "I once believed the gods spoke through priests," she murmurs, "but perhaps they too are bound by silence." You roll the scroll and tuck it into your robe, a treasure entrusted to memory rather than library. Together, you step into the open, where the sunlight filters through shattered windows and dust motes swirl like restless spirits. Returning to the boat, Hinutawi greets you with a nod. "Our voices may be soft," she says, "but they carry across the river." You settle beside Meritneith and Mutem-Wesket, forming a silent circle of shared grief. The boat glides back toward the temple, its wake tracing gentle arcs upon the water. As you near the quayside, a chorus of priests awaits, a chorus you can now name, Neferuonk, whose prayers still drift across the midnight pool, Hathor Irbi, whose hymn yet trembles upon the breeze, Merit Aset, whose empty jars line the altar, Iset Kerdi, whose heart yearns for songs unsung, Meritneith, whose lotus waters bear her silent prayer, Hinutawi, whose harp strings carry notes of longing, Mutem-Wesket, whose sons lie lost beneath the sands. Each woman stands among the priests, her story woven into the fabric of temple life, her voice rising in a hush that transforms into a hymn of remembrance. You step onto the quay, sand and river foam clinging to your feet. Torches along the walkway flare to life, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow upon the crowds of worshippers. You glance back at the river, where boats drift like drifting clouds upon liquid sky. In each vessel you see the outlines of those women's lives, grief carried upon currents, hope tethered to oars, remembrance etched in ripples. Turning toward the temple gates, you carry with you their quiet songs. As you pass beneath the archway, flanked by Anubis's jackals, you feel the hush of the inner sanctum settle into your bones. The world beyond hums with ordinary bustle. Merchants calling, children laughing, the river's endless murmur. Yet within you remains the secret chorus of women whose voices history almost forgot. And as you lay your head upon your pillow tonight, let your final reflection be this, that even in worlds built upon stone and power, it is the soft prayers of women, spoken in shadowed chambers, whispered into sacred waters, strummed upon golden harps, that shape the living tapestry of faith. Their grief and devotion linger in every echo of temple halls, in every curl of incense smoke, in every ripple upon the Nile. May their stories drift through your dreams like petals on the water, a gentle reminder that silence need not be empty, and that remembrance itself can be an offering more sacred than any chant. You step from the quay onto the flagstones of the temple precinct, the morning's brightness softened by slender shafts of light filtering through lofty pylons. The air is thick with the mingled scents of sandalwood and river mud, each breath reminding you that life and loss flow together, inseparable as the Nile's currents. You follow the procession of priests and priestesses along a colonnade of papyrus-columned halls, their sandals ringing softly on the polished stone. In their midst, you sense the silent weight of secrets carried in hushed glances and folded hands. Ahead, a chamber opens onto a small rooftop terrace where you and your companions pause. Below, the city's bustle hums like an insect's wing beat, distant carts and market calls weaving a tapestry of sound. But here, you stand above it all, with only the sky's vast pale dome for company. Along the terrace's edge, low benches line the balustrade, and upon each a figure kneels in private devotion. The first is Anhut, daughter of a temple seamstress whose nimble fingers stitched kilts for generations of priests. Anhut wears a tunic of dyed linen in deep indigo, its hue recalling the ink she used in her secret task, recording the names of avian species in the temple aviary. A mundane duty perhaps, yet one she transformed into a meditation on freedom, captivity. Each morning she catalogued the parrots and ibises, their cries echoing in her heart as though speaking of distant skies. When rumors of famine spread through the city, she crept out at dawn to scatter crumbs for the captive birds, whispering promises of open fields beyond the temple walls. Now, upon this terrace, she kneads a small clay bowl full of millet, letting each grain slip through her fingers like prayer. You sit beside her, heart reaching toward the hope she pours into this simple offering. Beyond Anhut is Nesitenebetashru, Lady of the Sacred Womb, once a midwife at the royal palace. In her youth she guided princesses through childbirth, her hands cool against fevered skin. But when palace politics demanded male heirs at any cost, she was compelled to supervise forced conceptions, ritual unions that weighed upon her conscience like stones. Stripped of her title, she now serves in the temple's southern wing, tending to the sick and the elderly. Today, she brings a bowl of water infused with crushed ferns known for their cleansing properties. You watch her dip a linen cloth into the mixture and press it gently to her forehead, as though wiping away some invisible stain. In the cool dampness, you perceive the relief she seeks, an attempt to wash away each enforced union, each soul she felt powerless to protect. Next to her kneels Hepzefa, a singer whose voice once soared in grand temples across the land. She wears a circlet of gold leaf daisies, petals curling like spiderwebs in the morning light. But since the Pharaohs' new decrees banned women from public song, her instrument lies silent in a back chamber. Today, she has fashioned a simple flute from hollow reed and carved its mouthpiece with symbols of Hathor, goddess of music. You watch as she lifts it to her lips and breathes a single, quivering note. The tone lingers between breath and breeze, fragile as a suspended tear. In that solitary note you hear her defiance, and her mourning for the silenced chorus of women. A hush falls as the high priest steps onto the terrace, carrying a polished lotus-shaped chalice. He moves toward a low altar built into the balustrade, where offerings await, bowls of honey, loaves of barley bread, garlands of jasmine and blue lotus. Meritneith stays in place, hands folded over her lotus water bowl. Henutawi stands by the harp's pedestal. Mutimwesket lifts her pendant, fingers brushing the lapis with a soft murmur. You kneel beside Anhut, pressing your palm against the cool stone floor to steady yourself. The high priest pours water from the chalice into the altar's basin, water consecrated by the dawn's first light, then sprinkles it over each offering, his words weaving silent invocation into the crisp air. When he finishes, the terrace falls into gentle motion. Anhut scatters her millet, the grains catching sun like tiny gold coins. Nesitana Batashru traces an arc with her fern water cloth, cleansing the altar and the space around it. Hepzefa places the flute upon the offerings, as if returning her silent song to the gods. One by one, each woman offers her token of memory, a remembrance of love, of duty, of sorrow transformed into sacred ritual. You rise and follow them back through the labyrinthine halls, where the walls pulse with painted reliefs of priests pouring libations, weaving crowns of reeds and opening the way for the departed. The footsteps of your small company echo softly as you pass niches holding statuettes of Thoth, Isis, and Osiris, deities whose stories intertwine with those of the mortal women who serve them. Beyond, a narrow stair winds downward toward the underworld crypt, where the temple's most secret rites are performed. You clasp a torch and lead the way into the stair's shadowed depths, where stone walls press close and the air grows cooler with each step. At the bottom lies a vaulted chamber, whose low ceiling hangs with strands of lotus fiber rope, braided by novices as symbols of life's fragile threads. Along the walls stand alcoves housing jars of unguents and perfumed oils, each jar sealed with wax and marked with the name of a priest or priestess whose legacy lives on in scent alone. The lamps you light cast trembling amber pools of light, revealing hieroglyphs scrawled in charcoal, jottings of private meditations and forbidden confidences. In the chamber's center is a stone slab carved in relief, with the figure of a woman kneeling before Anubis, his jackal head bowed in solemn reverence. This slab is known as the Weigher of Hearts, used to test a soul's worthiness in the Hall of Two Truths. Yet here, far from the Pharaohs' grand ceremonies, it serves another purpose, to remind the temple's keepers of their own heart's reckonings. You kneel beside the slab, tracing the lines of the woman's figure, her shoulders bowed, her arms outstretched. In her posture, you recognize Tamaret, a priestess once entrusted with the care of sacred texts. Under duress from jealous rivals, she was accused of defiling the scrolls and forced into exile. Her name was scrubbed from official rolls, but her spirit endures in this silent test, awaiting the day when her truth will tip the scales. Merit Neith steps forward, placing a small phial of lotus-distilled oil upon the slab. Its aroma wafts upward, softening the cramped space. "May her heart be balanced," she murmurs. Hanutawe adds a fragment of harp string, coiled into a wreath at Tamaret's feet. "May her song be heard," she whispers. Mutem Wesket lays her lapis ankh against the stone's cold surface. "May her love remain unbroken," she breathes. Anhut releases a single feather from her cassowary plume into a carved notch beside the slab. "May her freedom be restored," she vows. Hepzefa bows her head, hands empty but voice full of silent song. In that hush, you feel her offering. A final hush envelops the chamber as you and the women stand in a ring around the weighted slab. The flicker of torches casts shifting silhouettes upon the walls, as though the spirits of those forgotten stir in response. You feel a connection weaving through the group, an unspoken promise that no grief will be buried alone, that every name, however erased by power, will be borne forward by memory's tide. Rising, you retrace your steps up the spiral stair, each footfall carrying the newly placed offerings and the resonance of promises made. Emerging once more into daylight, you pause on the rooftop terrace to watch the sun's arc climb higher, gilding the temple's lintels and casting mosaic patterns through the papyrus columns. Below, the Nile's broad current carries barges heavy with wheat, their sails pale against the sky. You and the women stand in silent vigil, gazing upon the river's flow. Each of you carries in your heart the weight of stories half told and tears shed in private rituals. Yet together you have woven those fragments into a tapestry of remembrance, an offering more enduring than any plaque of stone. At your side, Hepzefa lifts her reed flute once more, letting your collective breath shape a single sustained note that drifts across the terrace. You close your eyes and feel it vibrate through your chest, mingling with the temple's eternal hymn, the murmur of wind and papyrus, the distant toll of sacred bells, the soft lap of water against stone. As the note fades, you bow your head in quiet benediction. The women beside you do the same, Meritnath's lotus water still glinting at her feet, Henutawi's harp string shimmering in the sun, Mutemwesket's ankh catching every ray, Anhut's feather resting upon a hymn-etched groove, Tamarit's name echoing in, the heart's unspoken ledger. You step back from the terrace's edge, turning toward the temple's inner pylons. Each column looms like a sentinel guarding the threshold between seen and unseen, between living grief and eternal memory. You inhale the air one last time, the blend of incense, river, and stone, and carry it within you like a secret flame. Descend now through the colonnade, footsteps soft as whispered prayers. As you pass beneath the painted ceilings, let the final image settle in your mind. A single lotus petal drifting upon still water, its reflection mirrored by a pair of priestly eyes, watchful, weary, and unwavering in devotion. In that image lies the secret heart of the temple, not in grand altars or gilded shrines, but in the hidden acts of remembrance carried by those who dared to mourn in silence. In the gentle hush of twilight, you wander back through the temple's vast precinct, the torches now dimmed to trembling embers. The breeze carries the faintest echo of your song, the single sustained note offered by Hepzephah's reed flute, woven through the undulating reeds along the Nile's edge. Each step you take is cushioned by fine sand that drifts across the stone floor, as if the desert itself conspires to lull you deeper into memory. Ahead, the great pylons stand guard like silent elders, their surfaces breathing the warmth of centuries into the cooling air. You pause before the western gate, where a carved relief shows a procession of priests bearing sacred emblems into the underworld. The figures move in solemn unison, their faces serene beneath the weight of hidden sorrow. In their midst you discern the faint outline of a woman's form, once erased by jealous rivals, now restored by your vow of remembrance. Her name, Tamarit, flickers to life on the stone, an echo of truth that reverberates through your chest. You place your hand upon her image, feeling the grooves worn by countless palms seeking solace. In that simple touch, you honor her exile and her quiet endurance. Beyond the gate lies the wider world, where the city's lamps are just beginning to flicker alight against a deepening violet sky. The first stars, Sothis, Sirius, glimmer in faithful pattern, reminding you that the heavens themselves bear witness to mortal grief. You step into the cool night, the gate closing behind you with a soft sigh, as though the temple itself takes a breath of release. A narrow path leads you down toward the riverbank, where boats slumber like great beasts tethered to the shore. You find the small skiff that carried you in daylight's hush, a simple craft of cedar bound with bronze nails, and settle into its cradle. The water laps gently against the hull, murmuring tales of kings in whose names have faded beneath its surface. You dip your fingers into the current and let the cool flow wash over your hand, carrying away the residual heat of stone and incense. As the boat drifts, you call each woman's name into the night, Neferwonk, whose prayers dissolved into the silvered pool, Hathor Irbi, whose lament echoed upon the balcony, Merit Aset, with empty jars that spelled compassion, Iset Kerdi, whose heart ached for the love she forsook, Meritneith, whose lotus waters bore her silent plea, Henutawi, whose harp strings held her grief in song, Mutemwesket, whose love remained a flicker of lapis, Anhut, who scattered millet like scattered hopes, Nesita Nebetashru, who cleansed wounds not hers to heal, Hepzephah, whose quiet note defied the banished chorus, Tamarit, the exiled scribe whose truth weighed the scales, and you, pilgrim of memory, keeper of their stories. A single cricket's chirp answers your call, and you let your voice fade into the night. The boat swings gently, guided by unseen currents, and you lean back against its smooth rail. Above, constellations wheel in silent splendor. In their pattern you perceive a tapestry of interwoven lives, each star a solitary soul, each constellation a shared legacy of grief and devotion. In the hush, you recall the shrine beneath the lone palm, the bronze Bastet whose watchful eyes bridged the mortal and divine, and the reed-woven ropes in the underworld crypt that bound each life's fragile thread. You remember the altar of broken pottery, the slate of Tamarit's weighing, the rooftop terrace where offerings of millet, water, harp string, ankh, Feather and oil formed a circle of remembrance. They were quiet acts, hidden beneath the veneer of public ritual, and yet in their hush they spoke with a resonance far deeper than gilded statues or grand processions. You rise in the boat, brushing grains of sand from your tunic, and step ashore at the northern quay. The water's edge is cool beneath your feet, and the lanterns hung upon papyrus stalks cast coruscating reflections across the surface. You carry with you a small alabaster box, the vessel in which you gathered sand from Tamarit's weighing slab, water from the moonlit pool, a single petal from Hanutawi's jasmine garland, and a handful of millet from Anhut's offering. Inside, these tokens rest like prayer beads, each one a vessel of memory. Under the paling sky, you kneel by the Khoi's lantern-lit stone. You open the box and spill its contents into the Nile's gentle current. The sand dissolves into silt. The water mingles with the river, the jasmine petal drifts upon the waves, and the millet scatters like gilt motes. You watch as they vanish from sight, carried toward the delta and beyond, to fields, to sea, to the place where water meets sky. In that moment, you feel the tether between memory and oblivion loosen, not as loss, but as transformation. Their stories become part of the living river, flowing onward through every grain of sand, every drop of water, every whispered breeze that ripples across the land. You rise as the last token slips beneath the surface and the lanterns begin to gutter one by one. The night deepens, and in its arms you sense the presence of those women, their faith, their sorrow, their enduring grace. They stand beside you in absence, companions beyond the veil. You close your eyes and take in a final breath of the sweet, heady scent of night-blooming lotus. In its fragrance you find both remembrance and release, a bittersweet lullaby echoing through time. Turning away from the quay, you walk slowly along the riverbank. Each footstep presses into the damp sand, leaving a solitary trail that soon merges with countless others. You sense that your journey mirrors theirs, a passage from solitude to solidarity, from hidden grief to shared remembrance. As you move, the night sky unfolds above you like a velvet scroll, and the gentle pulse of the river thrums beneath your feet. Ahead, the sky's deepest indigo gives way to a faint wash of dawn's promise. A single star, Venus, lingers as the harbinger of morning light. You pause and lift your face to its brilliance, remembering the high priest's silhouette in the alabaster doorway, incense curling around his censer, and the hush of a woman kneeling in darkness, her voice unheard yet eternal. In that memory, you recognize the temple's true secret, that the sacred resides not in grand spectacle, but in the tender, hidden acts of those who dared to love, to mourn, to remember. Soft as a breath, you whisper a benediction. May their stories flow like the Nile, unending, nourishing, ever renewing. May their voices echo in the rustle of papyrus and the sigh of incense smoke. May the heart scale remain balanced by truth and compassion, and may the living honor the dead by carrying their names into every dawn. With that final prayer, you continue along the riverbank, your path illuminated by the first rosy threads of sunrise. In your wake, your footprints imprint the sand, a quiet testament to a journey of remembrance. And as the world awakes around you, the secret role of those forgotten women endures, carried in the current of memory, whispered in each reed-laden breeze, and woven into the eternal tapestry of history's flowing stream. Sink into the slow rhythm of your breath as dusk settles like a silken veil across the land. Close your eyes if you wish, and feel the hush of twilight brushing against your skin, as gentle as the exhalation of ancient gods. Here, in the cradle of the Nile's first murmurs, you will journey to the dawn of belief, before temples rose, before priests spoke in sacred tongues, into a world where the seeds of religion were sown in the whispered prayers of women whose names the sand has almost reclaimed. Imagine yourself on the edge of a vast, untamed marsh, where reeds sway in a breeze scented with damp earth and blossoming water lilies. The sun has slipped below the horizon, leaving a bruised glow behind the papyrus stalks. In this liminal hour, the air vibrates with possibility. You step upon soft, yielding ground, sandals loose upon your feet, and each footprint sinks like a question into the riverbank. Somewhere beyond the reeds, water lapping against hidden islets carries echoes of voices you cannot yet understand. A woman stands at the water's edge, her silhouette framed by a sky fading from violet to charcoal. In her arms she cradles an earthen bowl half filled with Nile water, black with ochre silt. She is Kensit, she who feels the heart of the flood, a name passed in murmurs among fishing villages. By day she collects clay to gift the potter's fire. By night she listens to the river's pulse, deciphering its mournful stories. Tonight she pours the water into the bowl, filling the hollow with moonlight silver. Each drop spills stories of fish and crocodile, of lilies opening only under darkness, of currents both fickle and constant. You kneel beside her, fingertips grazing the bowl's lip, feeling the river's heartbeat through the thin clay. Kensit whispers her supplication to the flooded fields, wisdom for the seasons to come, mercy on children born weak, balance in a world ruled by both drought and abundance. Her words are soft as moths' wings. May the waters remember kindness. May they carry away sorrow and bring new life. As you speak the final syllable, ripples shatter the mirror of the bowl, scattering fractured stars across its surface. In that fracturing, you glimpse the secret beginning of faith, a woman's longing to shape the world through humble offering, to hear in the water's song the promise of something greater than herself. Together, you rise and wander into the reed's embrace. Their slender green towers tremble overhead, and the hush deepens to a sacred quiet. Somewhere, an owl glides between stalks, its feathers whispering against the night. You follow Kensit along a narrow path worn by travelers long gone, her footfalls almost silent, yours softer still. At the path's end stands a circle of standing stones, each carved with the faint outline of a lotus bud or a falcon's wing. No king or queen has claimed this place. It belongs to the earth and to the women who once gathered here to give voice to fear and hope. Within the circle hovers the scent of incense, myrrh carried on the wind from unseen braziers. In the flickering torchlight, you see figures emerging through the shadows, women of every age and station. An elderly midwife, Senumeru, her hair silver as river foam, holds out a shred of linen soaked in frankincense oil. She rubs it across her palm, eyes closed as though tasting a memory. At her side, Nobi, youngest daughter of a grain merchant, weaves strands of papyrus into a tiny boat, an offering to the goddess of the sky. Beside her, a nameless potter's wife presses earthen figurines, cats, gazelles, children, into the earth, each one a prayer for protection and remembrance. You stand among them, bound by breath and shadow. No priest's decree guides your steps, only the subtle gravity of shared loss. Daughters offered in political marriages, mothers whose infants were claimed by fever, scribes who watch their own words effaced by power. Each woman approaches the circle's center in turn, placing her token, a wisp of hair, a shell from the desert's edge, a finger's imprint in soft clay. In these small gestures, you feel the stirring of something vast, a tapestry of belief woven not by temple walls, but by hands stained with earth and tears. When the last offering is laid, the women form a ring, fingers linked like the coils of a serpent. Senumeru raises her voice in a chant older than any written language, each tone resonating with the earth beneath your knees. You join in, your voice trembling at first, then stronger as it finds its place among theirs. The chant is neither prayer nor lament exactly, but a weaving of sound, the rivers murmuring, the wind sigh through tamarisk, the pulse of newborn life beneath linen swaddles. As the chant builds, a low rumble stirs the stones. The petals of daisies at Nubi's hair unfurl, catching torchlight in fleeting glints. You press your palm to the nearest standing stone and feel its warmth, warm as a living thing, as though the earth itself listens. In that moment, you understand. Religion did not spring fully formed from temple gates. It began here, in the quiet communion of women who dared to speak the unspeakable, who carved hope into clay and breathed life into the void. The chant trails off, dissolving into the night like mist at dawn. Kensit dips both hands into a shallow basin at the circle's edge, retrieving water glimmering with torchlight. She passes the bowl to you. You raise it and drink, the river's taste, mineral sweet, thick with memory. As the liquid slides down your throat, the world shifts. You see distant fires on the riverbank, boats drifting towards sunrise, and beyond, towering dunes that catch the first blush of dawn. You feel the names of those women, Kensit, Senumeru, Nobi, and countless others, rise in your heart. each one an ember in the growing light. You set the empty bowl upon the grass, where it will remain as silent witness until the dawn wind carries it away. The circle of stones, too, embraces silence once more, their carvings faint beneath grasses. Yet in your mind's eye, the stones glow with an inner warmth, a promise that belief endures where hearts remember. As you step away, the hush deepens into reverence. The reeds whisper their farewell, and the owl's wings carry you back toward the river's path. Your footprints fade, yet the echo of that first offering remains, a pulse in the blood and bone of time. You sense that every temple will one day rise where such seeds were planted, each column and lintel grown from the fertile soil of longing. And now, as you prepare to awaken from this twilight journey, let your final vision be of a single reed bending over moonlit water, its reflection trembling between two worlds. In that fragile mirror lies the origin of all faith, a hushed question posed beneath the vault of stars, answered by the steady murmur of the Nile and the whispered courage of those who dared to believe. You linger at the edge of the marsh's pale glow until the first thin fingers of dawn unfurl across the sky. Leave the circle of stones behind and follow Khainsit as she leads you down a narrow channel where water laps at your ankles, cool and insistent. Here, in the world's still half-dream, the reeds arch overhead to form a living tunnel, their reflections rippling like whispered secrets. In their rustle, you hear the echo of women's footsteps through time, each pair a testament to lives lived in the interstice between muddy riverbank and sandal-smoothed courtyard. You emerge from the reeds onto a broad clay plain, pocked with tracks of birds and beasts that once drifted through these early days. Underfoot, the earth bears the faint imprint of 1,000 feet, both human and animal, marking the slow passage of seasons before the rise of cities. Khainsit pauses to gather a handful of moist clay, pressing it through her fingers until it crumbles like wet ashes. She offers you some, her eyes reflecting sky's pale promise. You shape the clay into a small token, an oval disc engraved with a single wavy line, and she nods with solemn approval. In this gesture, you touch an ancestral impulse to leave a sign, however humble, marking your passage through time. Ahead, the plain slopes gently upward to the flanks of a low hill crowned by a fissured rock outcrop. At its base is a cavern mouth, dark and cavernous, as though the earth itself draws breath there. Khainsit lights a torch tipped with resinous pine, the flame flickering against stone slick with dew. You step inside together, torchlight carving a path along walls streaked with ochre and charcoal. Here are the earliest marks of what will one day be called hieroglyphs, or rudimentary glyphs of birds, fish, and crescents, etched by hands that hummed ancient hymns. Though these carvings predate any pharaoh's reign, they resonate with the same yearning, to speak beyond the limits of flesh, to bind the seen world to something unseen. You crouch beside a low shelf hewn from living rock, upon which rests a shallow bowl of black soot water. Nearby lie brittle reeds stained with ink made from crushed berries. A woman emerges from deeper in the cave, Serpent, she whose words curl like serpent's body. Her flaxen hair falls in damp coils, and her robes cling to her legs. She carries a slender bundle of papyrus stalks, each bound with cord. The world needs a voice, she says, a voice echoing softly against stone, but words alone can vanish. She crushes handfuls of papyrus fibers into pulp, mixing them with water from the bowl. Together you press the mixture onto a flat stone to create the first sheets, a fragile promise that memory can outlast breath. As the sheets dry, the cavern's hush deepens. Serpent lowers her torch to reveal curved niches in the rock, where small oil lamps burn, ringlets of smoke spiraling toward the ceiling. In one niche, carved so finely it seems almost painted, is the outline of a mother cradling a child. You run your fingers along the carving's soft edges and feel the resonance of maternal grief. Mothers whose babes succumbed to flood-borne fevers, whose cries drifted unrecorded into reed-fringed skies. Serpent lifts an ink-laden reed and touches its tip to a new sheet. With deliberate strokes, she traces a symbol, a sweeping arc above a dot. "This is heart," she whispers. "It is where all longing gathers." You follow, tracing beside her until the word stands alone on the pale surface. From deeper in the cavern comes the softest creak, the approach of another figure. In the wavering torchlight, you discern a woman draped in garments the color of twilight. Senebtisi, she who brings peace. Her arrival is so silent you wonder if she is shaped of shadow rather than flesh. Upon her shoulders rests a shallow basket woven from palm fronds, filled with smooth pebbles of driftstone. She steps forward, selecting one and placing it at the foot of the heart glyph. "A gift," she says, voice threaded with compassion, so the heart may weigh not only sorrow, but also endurance. In her gesture lies an early ritual, a reckoning between pain and resilience that will echo through every temple to come. You and Serpent rise to follow Senebtisi beyond the inner chamber, down a twisting slope that leads to an open ledge overlooking the Nile's newborn curve. From here you see the river stretching silver and blind across the plain, its waters stirring with promise and peril alike. On the far bank lies a cluster of smoke-darkened huts, an embryonic hamlet of clay and palm. Kensit turns toward that hamlet, voice hushed as a breeze through reeds. "They will build there," she says. "First hearths, then walls, one day, temples. But for now, the people living in those huts tend goats and grind grain under acacia trees. Their lives hinge on rhythms older than kings, flood and seed, birth and mourning, the ceaseless passage from day to night. As you watch, a pale figure emerges from the huts, a youth named Asetbe, daughter of a potter and a weaver, her arms laden with baskets of grain. She spills some into Senebtisi's basket, bowing and greeting. "I bring the first harvest," she explains. "We offer these grains to the heart of the land." Asetbe's voice is lilted with nascent hope, the belief that one day the harvest will feed more than families, that it will underwrite a faith shared by many. Kensit steps forward to receive the grain, letting each stalk fall into the basket like a silent prayer. As she does, you feel the world shift, a convergence of earth, water, word, and ritual that forms the faint shape of religion's first breath. The 5 women, Kensit, Senumeru, Nubi, Serpet, Senebtisi, circle one another in companionship, their hands brushing as they pass hearth tools, clay tokens, papyrus sheets, pebbles, and grain. Each object, each gesture is a thread weaving the tapestry of belief, binding human longing to the river's ancient song. You kneel upon the ledge beside Asetbe, pressing your palm to the warm stone. In its heat, you feel the pulse of generations, of daughters thrust into marriages for power's sake, of midwives haunted by the cries of stillborn babes, of scribes whose names will erode like chalk in rain. Here, on this ledge before the hamlet, you sense the origins of compassion, of shared memory, of reverence for forces beyond mortal reckoning. Above you, gulls wheel against a sky rippling with lavender and gold. Their cries echo through your chest as though carrying messages from the gods themselves. You close your eyes to hear more clearly. The soft susurration of wind among papyrus, the plaintive cry of ibises at dawn, the murmured prayers rising from hearths in that distant settlement. When you open your eyes, Kensit stands before you, the basket of grain nestled at her feet. She places a single stalk in your hand. "Plant this," she instructs. "And remember." You bury the grain in the soft earth beside the ledge, covering it with soil. As you pat the ground smooth, you feel a seed of understanding take root within you. That religion began not in grand temples of stone, but in tiny acts of faith, in offerings placed at the dawn of possibility. The sun lifts higher, gilding the dunes in molten light. The 5 women gather at the ledge's edge, gazing upon the nascent village below. Each holds a token from the ritual, a clay disc, a papyrus sheet, a polished pebble, a stalk of grain, a fragment of bone from a revered ancestor. In their hands, these become relics of the world's first covenant, between humanity and the forces that shape existence. You rise to stand with them, the morning breeze brushing your cheeks like an unseen caress. In that moment, you understand that every temple that will one day tower along the Nile owes its genesis to this fragile communion of women, this chorus of quiet voices daring to name the heart's longings. You lift your gaze to the horizon, where sky and sand converge in a luminous haze, and as Kensit turns to guide you back through the cave's mouth, you carry within you the faint taste of sacred silt, and the knowledge that belief, once born, flows onward like the river, nourishing souls across the ages. You follow Kensit as she guides you down the sun-warmed plain toward the burgeoning hamlet, the breeze carrying the tang of grain and smoke from morning hearths. At the settlement's edge, clay huts huddle beneath acacia trees, their walls streaked with ochre and whitewash. Women move between hearths, coaxing coals to life, their faces half hidden by veils of linen. Children doze on reed mats, clutching woven dolls. Even here, at the edge of civilization's dawn, you sense the first stirrings of ritual, the measured turning of life toward the sacred. Kensit pauses before a low bench flanked by upright stones, an impromptu altar fashioned from a large grinding stone and 2 standing slabs. Upon it lie the tokens you helped plant at the ledge, the clay disc engraved with the wave of the Nile, the papyrus sheet inscribed with heart, the polished driftstone pebble, and the single stalk of grain. Senebtisi appears carrying a bowl of water drawn from a newly dug well. Serpet comes bearing ink-stained reeds. Nubi follows with small clay figures molded into shapes of geese and fish. Senumeru arrives last, bearing a coil of linen soaked in scented oils. Each woman lays her gift upon the altar in solemn procession as dawn's light deepens into morning gold. You stand beside them as they join hands in a loose circle. Naubi begins to chant in her clear, youthful voice, a simple refrain that has grown from Kensit's earlier invocation. Water brings life, heart binds us, grain sustains us, word remembers. The repetition creates a slow, deliberate pulse, each phrase folding into the next. As the women repeat the chant, you feel a current of energy rise from the earth beneath your feet, through your body, and exhale into the world. Above you, a pair of ibises wheel on outstretched wings, their cries mingling with the chant like natural counterpoint. The sun strikes the altar's surface, igniting the grain stalk into a filament of amber light. Serpet dips a reed in the water bowl and spreads droplets across the papyrus sheet, the inked heart glyph blooming darker against the damp. Senebtisi places the pebble next to it, and Senumeru lays the linen coil over the clay disc. In these gestures, you perceive the alchemy of early religion, the binding of elements, earth, water, air, and fire born of warmth, into a covenant that expresses hope, recollection, and resilience. As the chant subsides, a hush falls over the hamlet. Women pause in their work, heads bowed, children lift sleepy faces. Even the oxen in a nearby pen cease their lowing. In that stillness, you hear the first tremor of what will become temple ritual. Brief communion with the unseen, witnessed by all levels of community, initiated by women whose lives entwine necessity and faith. Kensit steps forward and lifts the linen coil. With each turn of the fabric, she murmurs the names of women lost to fever. Her sister, a midwife who tended dozens of births, the potter's wife whose kiln cooled never to warm again, the traveler sacrificed to the desert's cruelty. As she speaks each name, you feel the tension in her shoulders ease, as though remembrance itself lifts a burden. When she finishes, she shakes the coil like shedding tears, and the fibers scatter across the altar and into the earth beyond. Senebtisi then takes the clay disc and presses it into the ground at the center of the altar. "May the weight of memory settle in the soil," she says. "May it nourish what grows here." You lend your strength to her compact, pressing the disc into the loam beside her fingertips until it disappears beneath shifting dust. Next, Serpet unfurls the papyrus sheet and positions it against an upright slab, securing its corners with small pebbles. "Let the word endure," she intones, her voice catching on the final consonant as if tempted to break. "May ourselves be remembered through the ages." You touch the papyrus, feeling its smooth fibers, a delicate testament to the faith in permanence amid impermanence. Nubi kneels and sprinkles the clay figures around the base of the altar, a goose for bounty, a fish for renewal. Each stands like a small sentinel, its form simple yet suffused with intention. "In likeness, we honor what feeds and renews us," she whispers. Senumeru places the bowl of oils on the grinding stone, then pours the fragrant liquid across its surface, letting it pool at the foot of the slab. "May the scent of our intent rise to the heavens," she prays, inhaling deeply and closing her eyes as if tasting contact with the divine. Kensit then raises her arms, palms open to the sky. "We have begun," she declares softly. "With water, earth, word, likeness, and scent, May the gods, those we know and those we cannot name, accept our offering." The women echo her, their voices weaving together in a final chorus that resonates into the hamlet's waking day. As the ritual dissolves, Kensit beckons you to follow her away from the altar. You retrace your steps past huts where women stir porridge and bake pitas in clay ovens. Their eyes lift in quiet recognition, as though the air itself feels change. At the edge of the settlement, you pause beside a newly planted field of barley, green shoots trembling in the morning breeze. Kensit dips her fingers into the soil, then offers you handfuls to rub between your palms, moist, fragrant with promise. "Here," she says, "is where faith and labor meet. This field will feed your body, the altar will feed your spirit. Both must be tended." You bury the clay between furrows, knowing that every season the soil will remember, both barley and prayer. Further along, you come to a simple shrine of unbaked bricks draped with linen. Upon it rests a small jar of Nile silt, flanked by juvenile clay offerings. Nubi greets you, pressing a tiny bird into your palm. "Remember," she says, "that what begins in mourning and memory grows into song in abundance." You tuck the figure into your pouch, a talisman of transformation. You and the women ascend a gentle rise overlooking the settlement, its densest cluster of huts now alive with activity, weaving, grinding, husking. Beyond, the Nile bends toward the horizon, a ribbon of silver winding through emerald marshes. In the distance, you see a column of smoke marking the community's bakeries. Further yet, the first outlines of a wooden palisade that will one day evolve into defensive walls. Senebtisi steps forward, planting her drift stone pebble atop a termite mound. "Here stands the heart of our people," she declares. "May it beat with kindness." Hepzibah, who watched silently until now, lifts her voice in a single plaintive note, a melody that threads through the morning bustle and becomes, for a moment, an offering itself. The note trails away on the wind as you turn to face the 5 women. Kensit, Serpe, Senebtisi, Nobi, Senumeru, each bearing the marks of the ritual upon her hands, clay smudges, ink-stained fingers, grains of barley pressed into palm lines. You see in their eyes the quiet triumph of belief given form, of grief transformed into communal hope. Kensit clasps your hand in farewell. "You carry this blessing onward," she says. "Spread our story to other banks of the Nile, to places we cannot yet imagine." You nod, the weight of her gaze anchoring you to this place of origin. As you walk back down the plain toward the reed-lined channel that will lead you home, you feel the faint pulse of something vast awakening within you. A seed of faith planted not by decree, but by women's hands, nourished by water and word, shaped by memory and ritual. Every rustle of reeds, every ripple in the water, every swirl of dust across the earth will now carry the echo of that first covenant. When you reach the channel, the women step aside, blending into solitude once more. You cross ankle deep, the cool water closing over your feet like a benediction. On the far bank, the circle of stones stands silent, waiting for the next gathering of hearts. Pause there, if you will, and look back at the field of barley glinting in the sun, at the settlement that hums with nascent life, at the altar still crowned by tokens of faith. In that tableau, you see the dawn of religion's mysterious origins, not in the opulence of temples, but in reed beds and clay bowls, in whispered names and the longing of women whose stories will flow with the Nile through all time. Step forward now into your own world, carrying the memory of this place within you, a living grace that will remind you, even in the greatest cities of stone, that faith began in the hush of marsh and the hands of those who dared to believe. You cross the reed-lined channel one last time, feeling the cool water's caress fade from your ankles as you step onto the soft clay of dawn's final threshold. Pause here, where the sky and earth meet in a ribbon of pale light. Behind you lies the hamlet, its hearths brightening, its laughter fledgling but sure, and the field of barley shimmering with promise. Before you stretches the world you left, ordinary yet forever touched by what you have witnessed. As you walk away, your footsteps press into the soft ground, each imprint a quiet testament to the covenant formed in that place of origin. The clay disc slips from your pouch and crumbles beneath your toes, its wave-etched symbol returning to the earth from which it was shaped. You let it rest here, a final offering to the land that bore the first stirrings of faith. The path winds through groves of tamarisk and acacia, their twisted branches overhead forming a living canopy. Sunlight filters through lacy leaves, painting dappled patterns on your shoulders. In the hush, you recall the circle of stones where Quonset and her sisters gathered. Senumeru tending the coil of linen prayers, Nubi placing her clay geese, Serpet inscribing parchment with the first word of heart, Senebtisi laying her pebble, Wait and Kensit pouring moon-touched water. Each act wove a spell of remembrance that will echo wherever the Nile's waters flow. Ahead, the land rises to a gentle ridge. You climb its slopes slowly, hips and feet dusted with fine loess, until you stand upon its crest. Below, the river widens, bending in a gleaming arc like a mother's arm cradling her child. Beyond, dunes roll toward the horizon, their rippling ridges soft as sleeping beasts. The morning air carries the faint perfume of blue lotus and papyrus pollen, a scent that seems to hum with ancient memory. You close your eyes and breathe deep, letting that scent fill your lungs. Inhale, the promise of renewal born of 5 elemental gifts: water, earth, word, likeness, scent, bestowed by women whose names you now carry like talismans. Exhale, a benediction sent back across time to cradle their spirits. Opening your eyes, you reach into your pouch and draw forth the papyrus sheet, still faintly inked with the glyph for heart. Its edges have softened in the journey, but the symbol remains clear. You smooth it over your palm, feeling its fibers whisper beneath your skin. Then, with deliberate calm, you tuck it into the roots of an acacia sapling growing beside the trail. The papyrus unfurls in the breeze, a banner of remembrance fluttering against sky. Further along, a cluster of smooth stones marks a spring where travelers pause to drink. At its edge, you place the polished driftstone pebble, nestling it among the reeds. Its surface glints with trapped morning light, an eternal echo of Senebtisi's gift, balancing sorrow with endurance. A heron lifts from the water's edge, its wings arching in silent grace, and you sense in its flight the continuation of life's solemn beauty. You press on, and soon the path brings you to a grove of date palms. Beneath their swaying fronds stands a marble shrine erected by builders yet to come. 4 columns crowned with lotus capitals, girded by a stone basin. Without hesitation, you deposit the barley stalk into the basin, where it catches in a carved groove shaped like the rising sun. Its golden hue glows against the pale marble. Nubi's offering of sustenance now enshrined in the hush of potential worship. A breeze stirs the palms, sending fronds whispering overhead. In their rustle, you hear the faint echo of the women's chant. Water brings life. Heart binds us. Grain sustains us. Word remembers. Scent ascends. Each phrase entwines with the palm's sigh, reminding you that these words will ripple across generations. Leaving the shrine behind, you follow the trail as it begins to descend. The land opens onto a valley where shepherds tend flocks of goats and sheep. Their bells jangle like distant laughter. You pause at a shepherd's hut, its doorway open to the morning. Inside, woven mats cover the floor, and copper basins hang from wooden pegs. You place the coil of linen soaked in scented oils upon a low stool, the fragrance blooming in the hut's dim interior. When the shepherd returns, he will find the linen perfumed with frankincense, a relic of Senumeru's incense-washed prayers, and he will pause, heart stirred by a scent he cannot name. Beyond the valley, the path climbs again, this time through a stand of tamarisk whose roots drink deeply of hidden springs. Here, the air grows cooler, and the sky shifts to a deeper blue. A single reed flute, crafted by Hepzephah's hand and slipped into your pack, rests against your side. Recalling her plaintive note, you lift it and breathe a gentle tone that lingers in the branches, trembling like a question. No answer comes but the rustle of leaves and the echo of your own breath. Yet even this fragile song adds to the land's growing litany of remembrance. At last you reach the top of the ridge, where the vista opens to the broad sweep of the Nile Valley. The river gleams like molten silver, and in the distance you glimpse columns of smoke rising from villagers' hearths. You stand upon the ridge's lip, toes gripping the parched earth, and you feel the gentle pull of gravity, both literal and spiritual, the tug of river toward sea, of memory toward unfolding future. In your hand rests the last token, a small clay figurine molded into the shape of a child's arms raised in supplication. It is the final gift of the potter's wife, fashioned in a moment of longing for the children stolen by fever. You hold it aloft and let the morning sun catch its contours. Then, with a soft exhalation, you release it into the air. It falls in a gentle arc, landing on the bank below where the river's current will sweep it away. In that release, you sense a benediction. Sorrow transformed into offering, loss woven into hope's unfolding tapestry. As the figurine drifts on the river's surface, you watch until it disappears around a bend. And in your heart, you hear the silent vow of those women echo once more, that their prayers, their grief, their devotion would become the bedrock of everything to come. Turning away from the ridge, you begin the walk back to your own world. Each step carries the weight of what you have learned, that the origins of belief are not etched in stone by kings, but whispered in reed-fringed marshes by women whose names the sands almost forgot. In every sacred temple ever raised, in every chant uttered under vaulted ceilings, in every offering laid at silent altars, their spirits endure. As you fade into the day's unfolding tasks, whether tending hearth or scholar's desk, traveler's road or artist's studio, carry within you the echo of that first covenant. Let your daily acts mirror their offerings, a drop of kindness like water poured, a word spoken in truth, a remembrance laid like grain, a gesture of craft, a breath scented with hope. And when night falls again and you find yourself at the edge of sleep, let your final vision be of that acacia sapling, its papyrus banner fluttering against the stars, its roots deep in soil stirred by first prayers. In that silent image lies the enduring mystery and gentle promise of ancient Egypt's true beginning. Faith born not of power but of humble women's hearts, planted in the earth, watered by remembrance, blossoming into eternity. Sink into the hush of twilight, as though the world itself exhales beneath a veil of incense smoke. Close your eyes and let the gentle darkness cradle you, soft as the silken skirts of a queen. Here, under the watchful gaze of a crescent moon, you will step beyond the threshold of mortal realms and into the glow of divine authority, into the secret night of Pharaohs, those anointed on earth as gods among men. Imagine yourself stepping through a grand pylon gate, its towering sandstone walls warmed by the day's sun and still faintly echoing with the clang of bronze. You stand on a flagstone courtyard streaked with late-day shadows. Across its breadth, priests in linen kilts shuffle incense braziers before a colossal statue of the reigning king, broad shoulders draped in gold, the striped Neme's headdress framing his inscrutable gaze, the false beard curving like a cobra's smile. The statue rises 4 times your height, yet you feel its eyes upon you as though it were carved from living flesh. You move forward, fingertips brushing the smooth stone surface. The statue's presence hums in your veins, an unspoken promise of boundless power in the isolation that comes with it. In the hush, a solitary flute begins to play beyond the columns, its notes trembling through the air like distant stars. You tilt your head, trying to locate its source, but the music seems to drift from the very stones. A priest beckons you into a darkened side chamber, where a small fire gutters in an alabaster brazier. Shadows leap on walls painted with scenes of early dynasties, men lifting obelisks toward a rising sun, women pouring libations at altars of lapis and faience. Among the pantheon's myriad figures, you notice a single woman carved in limestone relief, Meritamen, daughter of a long-forgotten pharaoh, her slender figure clad in pleated linen, a cobra poised upon her brow. No hieroglyph records her deeds, yet here she stands, an eternal testament to the silent roles royal women played in embodying divine lineage. You step closer to the fire, warm air carrying the scent of frankincense and myrrh. The priest lays a papyrus scroll upon a stone pedestal, unfurling it with deliberate care. Its surface is inscribed with the words of the coronation hymn, the sacred song that declared the king not merely a ruler, but the living Horus, heir of Osiris, bridge between earth and sky. You read the elegant columns. Behold the shining one, rising like Ra, his voice the thunder, his breath the wind. He treads the heavens with sandals of flame. He bows the Nile beneath his golden gaze. As you read, the brazier's glow seems to deepen, and for a heartbeat, you feel the air thrum with cosmic resonance. In that pulse, you glimpse why Egyptians knelt not merely before flesh and bone, but before a living God whose will shaped the seasons and whose tears could summon floods or famine. The priest rolls the scroll closed and guides you deeper into the chamber, where a raised dais holds a sculpted bed of alabaster. Draped upon it is the royal uraeus, the sacred serpent crown, its hooded head cast in electrum, ready to strike the enemies of Ma'at. He lifts it with gloved hands and places it upon your brow. Instantly the chamber shifts, torchlight fractures across basalt walls, and for a moment you feel a stirring of power at the nape of your neck. In that fleeting reverie you stand as Pharaoh yourself, eyes luminous with the certainty of divine right. But the moment passes, and the priest removes the crown, setting it upon a cushion of lapis. You swallow reflexively, as though you might keep a taste of that authority on your tongue. He beckons you back toward the entrance, where the night breeze speaks through open gateways. Outside, the great courtyard is bathed in silver, columns receding into the gloom like silent sentinels. You wander along the colonnade until you come upon a smaller doorway leading to the women's quarters, a secluded wing where royal princesses and consorts lived in gilded isolation. Entering, you are struck by the hush, cushioned benches of cedar, latticed windows letting in slanted moonbeams, trays of alabaster bowls filled with crushed lotus petals. Here breathes the quiet sisterhood of queens, whose identities were woven into dynastic alliances and erased by shifting power. In the center of the chamber kneels a solitary figure, Nefertari, beautiful companion, her name spoken in courtly whispers as the great king's favored wife. She runs her fingers over a set of small painted boxes, one holding kohl for her eyes, another the red ochre of her lips. Each box carries a fragment of her identity, a face shaped for devotion, a body given in political pact. You approach and feel her solitude like a second skin. "They call me consort of Horus," she murmurs without turning, "but my heart still beats like every other mortal's." You watch her trace the curve of a painted lotus upon her wrist, a silent benediction against the loneliness of living in the god-king's shadow. A servant enters, offering a goblet of rose-infused wine. Nefertari takes it with a sigh, lips brushing the rim. "In my dreams," she confides, "I wander beyond palace walls, among fields of barley and wildflowers, free of the crown's weight." She pauses, her gaze distant. "But come dawn, I awaken robed in divine linen, my every step a prayer to gods I did not choose." You leave her in contemplative silence and step back into the corridor, the far wall illuminated by flickering torches. At the corridor's end, a narrow balcony overlooks the Nile's mirror black surface. You step onto it, drawing in the cool night air. Below, the river's currents gleam with starlight. In the distance, a lone barge drifts, its sails furled, its passengers asleep within woven cabins. A lullaby drifts up from the deck, the soft chant of a royal nurse, her voice carrying across water. You lean over the railing and see her kneel beside a cradle carved in ebony, its canopy draped with white linen. Within lies a princess no more than 2 years old, Menkar, daughter of the king and a secondary wife whose name has vanished from records. The child's dark curls brush the edge of the cradle, her tiny hand curled in sleep. The nurse hums, "Sleep, little Horus, sleep beneath the moon. May your dreams know no morning. May your tears fall in gardens of lotus. May your life outlast the stars." You watch until the lullaby fades, then step back, heart tight with the awareness of generational sorrow. A royal child born into divinity, yet destined to bear the weight of crown and prophecy before she has learned to speak. Rounding the corner, you find yourself before a small sanctuary. Its entrance is flanked by statues of Bastet, the feline goddess of home and protectress of children. Within, a solitary priestess kneels before an offering table. She is Satya, a royal daughter turned nun after her husband's family fell from favor. In front of her, bowls of milk and bread lie untouched. She lifts her hands in prayer, voice low as rippling water. "Grant me peace beyond these walls. Let my soul find rest from courtly chains. Unbind my spirit from the legacy of kings. Teach me humility beneath the god's gaze." You stand at the threshold, uncertain whether to intrude. Her prayer hangs in the chamber like incense smoke, thick with longing. When she finishes, she rises slowly, her hooded eyes meeting yours. "You bear witness," she says softly, "and in that act, you share my penance." Then she returns to her offerings, leaving you with the echo of her petition. Stepping back into the night air, you trace your path along the palace's outer walls. Above, the constellations wheel in silent procession, as though Egyptian priests have drawn their patterns across the sky. You pause by a sentinel's torch, its flame guttering in the breeze. The torchlight catches a faint smear of crimson upon the guard's collar, a stain from the royal offering earlier that evening. Such is the danger of living in proximity to divinity. A single misstep could draw the God King's ire. As you continue, the palace gives way to quiet gardens walled in white limestone. Here, jasmine trellises and pomegranate groves thrive under moonlight. You wander among the cool stone benches until you find one tucked beneath a canopy of date palms. You settle there, back to the trunk, and close your eyes, letting the night's chorus engulf you. The rustle of leaves, the sigh of water in a nearby fountain, the distant murmur of priests chanting by the river. In the hush, you summon the image of the pharaoh, his body mummified, his name inscribed upon temple walls, his soul weighed upon Osiris's scale. You see the mortal beneath the god, a man whose dreams were shaped by the priesthood, whose loves were dictated by alliances, whose tragedies were both public spectacle and private sorrow. You think of the queens who bore his children and then vanished, of the princesses walled behind palace gates, of the priestesses who prayed for deliverance from the very divinity they served. Your breath slows, your heart softens. The world of pharaohs and gods fades into a gentle murmur, as though you have listened to a distant hymn that now dissolves into silence. In that lingering quiet, you feel the fragile humanity at the core of divine rule, the mourning of daughters, the longing of wives, the penitent prayer of women forgotten by history. Let your final image be the silent figure of Nefertari at her painted bowl, the lotus bloom faint upon her wrist, moonlight tracing the curve of her cheek. In her repose, you hold both her grace and her grief, the essence of what it meant to live as the goddess's shadow. And now, as sleep's soft current carries you away, remember this: even the gods walk beneath stars and roses, and the tender weight of mortality remains their truest legacy. You leave the painted bowl and retreat deeper into the palace's heart, where torchlit corridors narrow until only your breath and the click of your sandals echo against limestone walls. Here the air grows cooler, heavy with the scent of lotus oil mingled with distant incense. Statues of Anubis and Thoth flank the passages, their jackal and ibis heads tilted as if listening to secrets whispered by each traveler. You follow the gentle curve of the hall until it opens into a small oratory, its vaulted ceiling draped with gauzy linen to soften echoes. In the center of the oratory, a marble pedestal bears a single item of vestment, the pharaoh's ceremonial sash, woven of gold thread and inlaid with precious stones that catch the torchlight in muted glints. A solitary attendant kneels before it, her dark hair bound in a simple fillet, her hands folded in silent prayer. She is Nebisha, Lady of Heaven, once a princess who faded into obscurity after a political marriage severed her royal lineage. Her eyes are closed, her lips moving in a silent litany. Bestow upon me the weight of your trust, that I may wear your mantle in humility, guide my hands when blood and sand conspire, hold my heart in balance beneath your gaze. You stand at the oratory's threshold, drawn to her devotion. Though she bears no crown, Nebisha carries a heavier burden than most, the sorrow of displacement, the exile from privilege, the unspoken grief of a woman whose name once adorned city gates, now reduced to a whisper in corridors like this. After a long moment, she opens her eyes, and you see in their depths the same shimmering reflection you felt before, the flicker of power mirrored by isolation. She rises and smooths the sash before sliding it over her shoulder. The gold thread rests like a promise across her chest. I wear this so the pharaoh may rest easier, she says, voice soft yet resolute. For if the god king worries, the kingdom trembles. You bow your head in understanding. She turns to lead you through an adjoining portal into a hidden garden courtyard, an oasis of jasmine and pomegranate, where marble benches nestle beneath trellises heavy with blossom. Moonlight filters through the leaves, pooling upon the marble floor like spilled silver. In the center, a small reflecting pool lies still, its surface dotted with fallen petals. Nebisha steps forward and lays a single jasmine on the water, watching until it drifts to rest at the pool's edge. She kneels beside it and whispers, "May the fragrance calm the king's restless dreams. May the petals soften the weight of his crown. May his heart remember mercy in times of decree." You kneel beside her, entranced by the hush that gathers here, so different from the grand amphitheaters of statecraft, so intimate that your own heartbeats thunder in your ears. The night air stirs faintly, a distant flute plays again, as if the palace itself breathes in music. When you rise, Nabisha guides you along a narrow path winding between fragrant beds. You pass a small alcove where bowls of rose water and crushed mint await, tended by a young attendant whose eyes shine with sorrow. She is Merit, daughter of a humble scribe, chosen to serve the queen in hopes her ingenuity might earn favor. But Merit's own identity dissolved beneath the weight of courtly expectation. She bows deeply and offers you a bowl of chilled rose water. Its coolness soothes your palms, but you sense in her posture an unspoken question. Who will tend her own spirit when all her days are spent tending others? You follow Merit through the garden until you arrive at a low pavilion overlooking a moonlit fountain. There, a queen consort reclines upon cushions of dyed linen. She is Ankh-Senamen, life of Amun, whose marriage to the Pharaohs sealed alliances but sealed away her dreams. The waters of the fountain ripple as she lifts a small goblet of perfume to her lips, inhaling deeply. The scent is haunting, ambergris and lotus with a faint note of cedar. Ankh-Senamen offers the goblet to you, but you can tell it is an empty ritual, her expression distant. I taste only memory, she confesses, voice like a sigh. Once, I walked barefoot along riverbanks, gathering shells and laughing with sisters. Now I navigate marble halls in gilded sandals, my laughter traded for protocol. She closes her eyes, pressing the empty perfume bottle to her heart. I am living God to many, but to myself I am a stranger. You sit beside her, feeling the fountain spray like dew on your skin. She reaches for your hand, her fingers trailing along your palm. Tell me, she murmurs, what does it mean to be mortal beneath immortal decree? Before you can answer, the flute melody swells from beyond the garden gate. A call to dawn rituals nearing. Ankh-Senamen stands, brushing petals from her skirts. Come, she says, the court awaits. She leads you back through lantern-lit walkways, each one lined with carved reliefs depicting pharaohs receiving the Ankh from Ra himself, a celestial endorsement of their rule. At the end of the passage, you emerge into the grand audience hall. Its columns soar overhead, painted with scenes of gods presenting crowns to kings. The floor is strewn with lotus petals, and courtiers arrayed in finery bow as the pharaoh himself strides in, his gait measured, his presence enveloped in light. He wears the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, its weight symbolizing dominion over two lands. Around him stand his great royal wife and the heirs to his throne, their faces solemn masks of divine lineage. You watch as the pharaoh raises his scepter, and a hush falls so deep it seems to still every breath. Then he speaks, voice calm as distant thunder, issuing decrees that will shape the Nile's floods and the fate of every soul in his realm. As you listen, you feel the fragile web of lives bound to his words, the daughters offered in diplomatic unions, the scribes rewriting history to flatter his rule, the priests chanting his glory as they bury their own doubts. And yet, beneath the veneer of divinity, you sense the quiet tragedies, the consort longing for fields beyond palace walls, the princesses whose childhood ends on their wedding night, the priestesses who pray for deliverance from the god-king's gaze. In the pharaoh's speech, you hear not only command, but the echo of generations of women who built his legacy with tears and tempered clay. When the audience disperses, Nabisha approaches you again, her saffron robes glowing in torchlight. You have seen the living gods at their height, she says softly, but remember, their power rests on mortal foundations. She lays her hand on your shoulder, offering a benediction. May your heart remain unbowed by the weight of crowns. May your soul remember the daughter behind the deity. May you carry their quiet sorrows into your waking world. As she departs, you linger in the hall's hush, tracing your fingertips along the polished floor. Torchlight flickers on the painted reliefs, and for a moment the pharaoh's face seems to soften, a mortal trace beneath the rigid mask. You turn toward the hall's exit, drawn by the promise of night's final embrace. Outside, the courtyard awaits under a sky bruised with dawn's first light. A solitary lotus petal drifts across the flagstones, and you catch it before it tucks into a crack. You hold it against your palm, feeling its fragile warmth. Let this petal be your final image, a symbol of life born from mud, of beauty fragile yet enduring, of the mortal heart that pulses beneath the God King's crown. Rest now, carried by its gentle weight, and remember that even those deemed divine find solace only in the quiet human bonds they leave behind. You step from the audience hall into the palace's inner gardens, where lanterns flicker like grounded stars among blossoming acacia and jasmine. The air is thick with perfume and the hush of slumbering fountains. Guarded pathways twist between marble benches, each one holding a silent witness. Women once bound to the Pharaoh's side, now remembered only by carved reliefs and the lingering scent of their offerings. Ahead, you find Tia, beloved of Amun, reclining beside a low pool ringed with lotus flowers. She was born a princess of Nubia, taken north to solidify an alliance, her ebony skin celebrated then forgotten once her duty was done. By torchlight, her dark eyes reflect the floating petals as she dips her fingers into the cool water and lets droplets fall like tears. "They name me daughter of two lands," she murmurs, voice soft as reed paper. "Yet I never knew home." She traces a pattern in the water, an unspoken prayer for belonging. Before releasing her hand and watching the ripples fade, you sit beside her and feel the hush deepen, as though the garden itself leans close to hear her lament. Somewhere beyond the arbor, a nightingale stirs, its song threading through scented shadows. Tia tilts her head toward the melody, closing her eyes. "Even the birds sing of freedom," she whispers, "but I am draped in gold and bound by courtly ties." She smiles faintly, touching a strand of her long braid. Yet in this stillness, I am only a woman, learning to breathe without expectation. Rising, Tia guides you along a moonlit colonnade to a secluded arbor heavy with white roses. There, seated upon a stone bench carved with images of Hathor and Isis, is Citamen, daughter of gold. As the eldest child of the great king, she was wed at 13 to secure dynastic claim. Her childhood surrendered to royal decrees. She holds a silver mirror at waist level, examining her reflection by lamplight. In the glass, her face seems both youthful and ancient, eyes alight with memory and yearning. "They crowned me maiden of the gods," she says, a voice barely louder than a breath. "But who am I behind this mask of divinity?" She turns the mirror so you can see yourself reflected back and then closes it, tucking it into her lap. "Look away from the face," she advises, "and find what lies beneath." You rise, trailing her to a small shrine nestled under the arbor. On its altar rests a single item, a pair of sandal straps embroidered in lapis and gold. Citamen's childhood gift to a temple singer. She kneels and unties the straps, placing them at the goddess's feet. "These bore my feet across palace courts," she explains. "Now I leave them behind, so my heart may learn another path." The roses stir in the evening breeze, petals brushing the straps like benedictions. Moving onward, you come upon 3 candles arranged in a triangle upon a marble pedestal. Their flames flicker in unison, casting gentle shadows upon the walls. Nefertari's voice, soft and distant, chants a hymn to Osiris. "From crown to root, from life to seed, we all return to earth's embrace. Let our memories flourish in silent soil. Let our names bloom beneath the sun." Kneeling before the candles is Tausre, mistress of the southern lands, who bore the Pharaoh's second-born son, yet watched her line eclipsed by rival princes. She lifts her gaze to the dancing flames, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. In her hands rests a tiny coffer of cedar, inside a lock of her son's hair, preserved in resin. She opens the lid and lets the fragrance of pine drift upward. "He asked me once why I wore the scarab amulet," she says, voice trembling. "I told him it guarded his journey beyond the river of stars. But who guards mine?" She closes the coffer and offers it to you. "Hold this for me," she requests, "until I learn to trust in more than symbols." You accept the coffer and rise, guiding Tausre back into the garden's deeper shade. There, beneath a spreading tamarisk, you encounter Karamama, Lady of Pure Heart. She stands before a small reflecting pool, stroking its surface with a lotus petal. By day she served as temple singer, her voice entwined with hymns to Ra. But when palace intrigue claimed her patroness, she was condemned to silence. Now she offers each pilgrim a single petal soaked in scented oil. You kneel before her and she presses the petal into your palm. Its surface is moist with rose and myrrh. "Sing my name," she whispers, "so that I may live again in melody." You hold the petal to your chest, feeling its weight like a promise. As the night wanes, the garden's shadows grow longer and the torch flames gutter. Sandaled feet approach, Ankhesenamun's gentle step drawing near. She carries a small alabaster jar filled with crushed calendula petals. The petals glow like ember fragments in her palms. "For every day I wore the crown," she says softly. "I pray for saffron and sunshine to heal the wounds beneath." She opens the jar and sprinkles petals across the garden path, each one a benediction upon the earth. As they drift, you notice the flowers settle upon each shrine you have visited: the lotus by Tia's pool, the rose by Cidamun's straps, the pine coffer by Tausret's candles, the myrrh petal by Karamama's pool. Their stories mingle here, Ankhesenamun observes. May their sorrows nourish new blossoms. The air fills with the scent of calendula and the hush of petals falling. You close your eyes, breathing deep, feeling the collective grief and grace of these royal women, a lineage of daughter, sister, wife, mother preserved in fleeting acts of memory. In the distance, the first song of dawn's birds drifts across the garden walls. Tia, Cidamun, Tausret, Karamama, Meritneith, Henutawe, Mutemvesket, Nefertari, Satia, Nebatia, Merit, and the countless others who shape the living god's legend in hidden prayers and tender offerings stand at your side, their presences woven into the night's final breath. You sense them gathering, forming a silent procession toward the palace gates, their footsteps soft upon the marble. A hush falls as the night's lanterns dim and the sky bleaches with early light. You step backward, releasing the cedar coffer to Tausret's gentle hands, and offer Karamama's myrrh petal back to her palm. Ankhesenamun's calendula petals settle around you like a crown of blossoms. Cidamun's mirror and Tia's lotus bowl rest in their places. In this sacred circle, the whispered tragedies of God King's shadows have been honored and returned to the earth. You find yourself at the garden's edge, where the palace's outer wall looms, pale and silent. Beyond it, the Nile's broad mirror reflects the faint glow of dawn. You pause, hands clasped at your chest, and feel the weight of divine lineage balanced by mortal sorrow. In that moment, you understand why the Pharaoh's divinity was as fragile as a rose petal upon water. Because even gods rest upon human grief, upon the silent devotion of those who tend their legends in the hush between incense and dusk. With one final breath of calendula-scented air, you turn away from the garden and step through the palace gate, leaving behind the last echoes of moonlight and memory. And as the horizon brightens, let your final image be this: a solitary rose petal drifting upon the Nile's surface, caught between shadow and dawn, a testament to the living god's mortality and the women whose quiet sorrows gave him shape. You step through the palace gate into the pre-dawn hush, the last whispers of night clinging to your skin like a silken veil. Ahead stretches the riverbank, where the Nile's broad mirror glimmers with slate-gray promise. The rising light is slow and uncertain, as though even the sun hesitates before revealing the world anew. You walk barefoot upon cool flagstones, carrying in your breath the lingering perfumes of jasmine, myrrh, and calendula from the hidden garden. Behind you, the palace sleeps beneath its blanket of torches and shadows, but before you, the river beckons with its ancient song. You pause at the water's edge, the soft lapping of waves a lullaby older than memory. A slender boat drifts toward the quay, its prow carved in the likeness of the Uraeus serpent, guardian of sovereignty. The boatman, cloaked in linen the hue of dawn, awaits your boarding with silent reverence. You step aboard, the wooden boards creaking beneath your weight. As the boat pushes off, you feel the current's gentle tug, an invitation to journey not only across water, but into the heart of a kingdom made divine by mortal hands. The boat glides downstream, slipping past the palace's white limestone walls and entering a landscape painted in soft grays and purples. On the river's banks, reeds whisper in chorus, and the silhouettes of fishermen lean over nets, their silhouettes reflected in silver ripples. You lean over the side and let your fingertips skim the water's surface, feeling its cool pulse. In that simple touch, you sense the bond between Pharaoh and people, the ruler's prosperity born of the river's bounty, the river's favor secured by the elaborate rites of state. A soft cry rises from the bow. You turn to see Meketaten, the king's younger sister, standing on the prow. Her slender form is draped in pale linen, and her eyes are bright with unshed tears. She is no more than 10 years old, yet already she feels the weight of her bloodline pressing upon her shoulders. "They say I share his blood," she murmurs, voice quavering as though carried by the breeze. Yet when I try to speak, they forestall me with hushed whispers and courtly nods. She reaches out to take your hand, small and trembling. "Will you tell my story beyond these waters? That I might be remembered not as a daughter of God King, but as a child who dreamed of daisies?" Your heart stirs with tenderness. You lift her hand to your lips, brushing your palm across her knuckles. "Your voice will sail with this boat, you promise?" Meketaten presses a folded linen scarf into your hand, its threads faintly scented with lotus. "For when I am silent," she says, "let my scent speak of my presence." You tuck the scarf into your robe, feeling its texture like a promise against your chest. The boat rounds a gentle bend and approaches a cluster of small islands where herons roost on papyrus stalks. On the largest islet stands a solitary shrine, a square platform of white marble crowned with the figure of a falcon-headed Horus, signet of divine kingship. Around its base lie offerings fresh from the night, saucers of honey, fish wrapped in papyrus leaves, ivories carved with prayers. You step ashore onto warm sand, Meketaten close beside you, and each footfall recalls the slow procession of priests bearing emblems of power. A young priestess emerges from the shrine's shadow. Her name is Anuket, beloved of the Nile, and she serves in the annual festival of the living Horus. Her dark hair is braided with strands of blue lotus, and her arms bear bracelets of polished copper. She greets you with a soft inclination of her head. "The festival begins at dawn," she whispers, eyes lifting to the horizon's pale glow. Yet the true ceremony takes place in silence, when the boat of the God King crosses the first current. She raises her hands, revealing palms dusted with ash, a sign of mourning and renewal entwined. We cast ash upon the water as a plea for mercy, for the Pharaoh's heart to remain balanced. You follow her to the edge of the marble platform, where bowls of ash lie waiting. Each step echoes with the soft hymn of dawn, a chorus of robed priests chanting the king's epithets, the murmur of courtiers offering token reverence, the low rhythm of animal hides beating funeral drums. Meketaten watches, her small chest rising with anxious breath. You place your hand on her shoulder, offering silent comfort. Anuket dips her fingers into ash and lets it sift through her clenched palm. The granules drift like morning petals, settling on the water's surface in dark tendrils. "For the God King's mercy," she intones. You follow suit, then guide Meketaten's hand to her own bowl. The child hesitates, then lets the ash fall, her face trembling as she watches it dissolve into the river. You feel a surge of compassion. Here a sister knelt to plead for a brother deemed divine, her words carried on currents more potent than any scroll. As the last ash drifts away, the boat's horn sounds, a low, reverberating call that vibrates through the air like distant thunder. Meketaten leaps back to the boat as Anuket retreats, her role fulfilled. You follow Meketaten back aboard, the vessel already sliding along the dark linen waters. The boatman has removed the uraeus-carved prow, replacing it with a slender pole bearing a white banner, the symbol of Ma'at, balance, and truth. The boat glides beneath the banner, and you feel the river's embrace deepen. Meketaten curls at your feet, gazing out at the horizon's pale blush. "I wish to see him," she whispers, "to know he hears my plea." You lift her gently, placing her in your lap as the boat drifts toward the palace quay. There, torches flare to life, casting golden arcs across painted pylons. In the center stands a second boat, larger, more ornate, its mast crowned with gilded streamers. This is the Pharaoh's vessel, awaiting his arrival for morning devotions. You and Meketaten step ashore, the flame-lit quay thrumming with anticipation. Priests move in measured lines, carrying canopic jars and gilded scepters. The great royal wife and the royal children stand upon a dais, their faces veiled in violet shadows. Meketaten's breath hitches as she scans the crowd. You guide her behind a column where carved reliefs depict her brother as solar deity, Ra Harakti, rising over the horizon. A hush falls as the Pharaoh's boat appears, its sail catching early light. The vessel moves like a living thing through the torch smoke, its polished hull gleaming with gold leaf. You feel the collective intake of breath as the pharaoh steps onto the quay, his stride measured, his gaze gentle yet distant. He wears the Atef crown, its ostrich feathers trembling like silent prayers. In his hand, he carries the Waz scepter, a symbol of authority that ends in a forked tail, echoing the river's branching currents. Meketaten presses herself to you, eyes wide as the pharaoh approaches. He pauses before the dais, offering his arm to his great royal wife. She steadies him as though he were both god and child, her grace hiding the exhaustion of her nightly vigil. He greets courtiers with nods, his voice low as distant thunder, issuing blessings and ordinances. Yet his eyes scan the crowd, as if seeking a single face among thousands. You feel Meketaten's small hand slip from yours as she steps forward, her scarf of lotus scent fluttering in her grasp. "Brother," she calls, voice bright as a waterfowl's cry. The pharaoh turns, his crown's gold rays catching torchlight like a newborn sun. For a moment his gaze rests upon her, and you see his lips curve in a tender half-smile. Meketaten curtsies deeply, eyes shining with relief. "Your sister greets you," she murmurs. The pharaoh kneels to take her hand, his scepter leaning against the dais. "My child," he whispers, voice soft as river reeds. He lifts her head to meet his gaze, and you feel the hush deepen, a king in human form, kneeling to the girl who dared to call him brother rather than sovereign. Meketaten's scarf drifts to the ground, its lotus perfume mingling with the pharaoh's aura of divinity and vulnerability. Behind them, priests chant a benediction to Ma'at, words of balance that echo across the quay. You watch as Meketaten braces herself with the pharaoh's strength, her small form shaded by his divine presence. In their union, you perceive the fragile knot between God and mortal, the place where power finds its anchor in human love. As the ceremony draws to its close, the pharaoh stands lifting Meketaten to her feet. He sinks to one knee before her, offering a ring of carved gold, a signet bearing his cartouche and her own, in a gesture that both elevates and equalizes. "For you, my sister," he pronounces, "I set aside my crown." Meketaten's eyes widen in awe as he slips the ring upon her finger. She clasps it to her palm, her cheeks flushed with wonder. You slip away from the dais, heart full, and guide Meketaten back toward the waiting boat. The crowd parts before you, torchlight dancing on the pharaoh's footprints. As you reach the water's edge, the royal vessel's crew unfurls its sail, the white banner of Ma'at snapping in the morning breeze. Meketaten steps aboard your boat, her gaze lingering on the pharaoh's lifted hand as the two vessels drift apart. The current carries you downstream, leaving the palace's brilliance behind. Meketaten presses the lotus scarf to her cheek, breathing deep. "He heard me," she whispers, "not as a god, but as my brother." You nod, guiding the boat back into the reed's embrace, where the world grows hushed once more. Above, the sun rises fully, painting the sky in liquid gold. The river glitters with promise and peril equally. Meketaten stands at the prow, her scarf streaming behind her like a banner of remembrance. You join her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Your story," you say softly, "will flow with these waters." She smiles, eyes bright, and together you watch the river unfold, an endless testament to the mortal heart at the core of divine rule. And as the current bears you beyond the horizon's edge, let your final sight be this: a child's laughter echoing between reeds carried on the river's breath, a fragile, enduring proof that even gods cannot stand apart from the human souls who shape their legend.